Hello, friends, and welcome to all new Snap Judgments. In this, our third episode, I am joined, as always, by my friend and yours, Aaron Glazer. How are you this evening, Aaron?
I'm great. Day off from work. Happy Juneteenth as of our recording. I know everyone's hearing this later, but happy Juneteenth. Hope you had a great day.
Excellent, excellent. And Aaron, we are very happy to welcome a special guest back on the show today. Aaron, who are we continuing the most guest host race with Savage Yeti? Who is continuing it this week?
So Bootman messaged me after last episode, and he was like, I cannot have this. You're showing Yeti too much love. I'm coming back on next week. Shut up. We're doing this. So, I guess we're back with Bootman. Jeez, guys.
I was on my hands and knees begging. But yes, I'm Chris Bootman Boutte. You can find me at Bootman MSTZ on YouTube and Twitter. And I do my own little Marvel Snap podcast called Snap on Ego with an amazing co-host. And in fact, we brought him along too. How you doing, Brad?
Hi. My name is Brad, otherwise known as Bradcifer, and I actually do a podcast with Chris here. And it's very fun, and it's actually really cool that we have this merging of podcasts. But you know what makes merging our two podcasts to be something that's actually something is celebratory, right? We as podcast hosts, it doesn't make sense for us to just be doing it together. We need to bring a guest on for the dual podcast. So we brought on Molt.
What's going on? Happy to be here, guys.
It's a
Party. Real quick, before we jump in, Brad, did you say where our loyal listeners can find you?
You can find me literally everywhere under the moniker Bradcifer. So, easy peasy. You can remember that. That's it. Super simple. YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff.
Molt, if for those of our listeners who don't know where to find you, where could they find you on the wonderful social, very useful internet?
On Twitter, I'm under Molt_YT, and then Molt Marvel Snap on YouTube for all of your Snap content, especially Move Snap content.
Awesome. We are so happy to have you all here today. Glazer?
Before we go on, we have to apologize that there's no video with Molt on. Like, I know that that's the real draw for everybody. That, like, they can just, freeze frame him and, like, put him next to Cozy and try and figure out which is which. And, like, really sorry that we're not going to be able to do this for you guys.
All right. So, before we jump into a very jam-packed episode, I need to remind you, our loyal listeners, where you can find us. Our number 2 social media, but the first place you probably should go to find us is Glazer's Reply Guy account, which is at SnapJudgeCast on Twitter. We also have a TikTok, which is at SnapJudgeCast. And we are now the official podcasting partner of Marvel Snap Zone. We are so excited and so grateful to be part of their community. And you can now find us on their Discord. We are very active in Discord, especially Glazer, up and down all the different channels. But we have our own Hang with the Hosts of this podcast Discord channel where we have a great mini community going on. It's a really awesome experience that you should go check out. Again, at the Marvel Snap Zone Discord. We have an email, which is snapjudgmentspodcast@gmail.com, where we will respond to your messages if we can get it through all the kick spam that Glazer has subjected us to. And we are also on Mastodon at Snap Judgments at tabletop.vip if you're on that extinct mammals social media network. And most importantly, our number 1 social, the big one, our YouTube channel at Snap Judgments Pod, where Glazer posts daily Snap Takes YouTube videos. Aaron, if our loyal listeners wanted to become our loyal viewers, what would they find on the podcast YouTube right now?
All right, my favorite sales pitch. It works great. It worked great with like Lambie. It worked with KM. It works with Boot. Love you, Boot. It doesn't work with Molt. My goal on the YouTube is to try and find meta breaking decks before the bigger content creators can get to them, before they're able to notice them. The reason I can't do that today, because usually I do like, and I can get you there faster than Molt with his 10 bajillion subscribers, because he's got to sort through everybody, right? But Molt doesn't play meta decks like at all ever. He released, I think, one meta video in like the last month, so that's a lie. You will get totally off the beaten path decks from Molt. But my goal is to try and find decks that will be part of the meta, that you will see like go far and wide, but get you them as fast as possible.
All right. So let's start off with the card that will be releasing as we record this, just a few short hours from when we started. The Spider Ham himself, who is probably, I don't know, this is a very, I guess, month of controversial and interesting cards that are getting released. I don't know if this one is more controversial and interesting than the one next week, but this is where we are today. So what does Spider Ham do? He's a 1-for-1 that says, on reveal, transform the highest card in your opponent's hand into a pig, keeping its power and cost, but it loses all of its abilities. So, Galactus becomes a 6/7, and, Doctor Doom becomes a 6/5 that does nothing. But, of course, Infinite becomes a 6/20. So, there are some sort of drawbacks and some tension in the card. But that, but, of course, any lower cost card, if the highest cost card in their deck is a 3, boom. Or, excuse me, their hand, not their deck. So where do we land on this card? Molt, since you play off the beaten path decks, would you call this card on the beaten path or off the beaten path of a card?
I would say it probably leans more towards off the beaten path. I think that is going to be a very specific situation. It'll be interesting to see if people use it in bounce decks. I'm not sure if it will actually work in that regard, but I mean, if you can Beast and Falcon this and just absolutely wreck somebody, then that's going to be really interesting to see. But obviously, you're going to have to draw into it early on. And with the recent Beast rework, if you will, it might not be as effective. But I think just by itself, you're not going to see it too much. And most people don't really carry Infinite or anything like that unless they're playing, say, Lockjaw or Discard or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. I don't really know why it fits in the move season, but it's because it's the Spider-Verse season, not the move season. But yeah.
All right, Brad, how about you? What do you think? Do you agree with our man's Molt here, or are you like, nah, this card immediately slots into every deck?
I wouldn't say it slots into every deck. It has had some drawings of comparisons with like Iceman, for example. One thing that I do find interesting about this card is we've heard the debate about Iceman of like, when is the best time to play it? Do you want to play it early to potentially like mess up their curve along the way? Or do you want to hold on to it a bit later, maybe turn 3 or so, to really focus on hitting a 5 cost that just jumps into a 6 cost and really mess up their late game curve? And what's the bigger impact there? With Spider-Ham, I think the answer is actually to hold on to it a bit later, because you want your opponent to draw into those 6 cost cards or 5 cost cards like your Iron Mans, like your Doctor Dooms, things like that, to have a higher chance of hitting them to really cause a big impact. So in that vein, I think it could be a pretty good card. I just don't think it slots into every deck possible. You're probably going to see it a lot over the next 24 to 48 hours, I would imagine, especially with it being the first card going straight into Series 4. But I'm more 50-50 on it than I think Molt, but I would probably down the line tend to lean more towards it being, it shows up every now and then, but one deck is going to love playing this card. It's just, we've yet to see what deck that would be.
Well, Boot, how about you? Is this the pig that was promised? Is this going to slay Galactus, or is this going to, just be bad bacon? What do we got?
I am so glad you asked. I know my man Molt over here has been excited about all the move cards, but this card, this little pig right here, I am so excited for. I cannot wait to put it in bounce decks, in Moon Girl decks. I was talking with Glazer right before this. He showed me some decks, and I'm like, I want to try them all. I want to just ham up all of the different things, and I'm just super excited. Like, I want to just ham like Galactus, Doctor Doom, but like in all seriousness, I think it'll be decent. I've been playing I don't know about you guys, I've been playing a ton of Conquest mode, and there's just so much high evolutionary. I'm kind of on the fence about how it's going to work against Hulk, because Hulk is still 12 power, right? You know, but it will be decent if they're doing like the lockdown deck and you tag their Doctor Doom. You know what I mean? But one thing, and I'm curious all of your thoughts on this too. I've been seeing some debate today about like how polarizing this card's going to be. Is this going to be like the next Leech, right? Like in my opinion, it's a little bit more balanced. It's hitting one card, a very specific type of card. You know what I mean? And it's not like a card that you just get on the regular collection track unless you get lucky, you know? So I think it's a fair and balanced card. But one thing that has been brought up as well is, do you get to see the card that you hit? I believe you do. I think Glenn might have confirmed that. I can't remember. But like, I think you get to see the card. And some people don't like that. I'm a huge fan. I love knowing that. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I hope they don't allow you to see the card. I'm not a fan of that. If Iceman can't show you the card, then I don't think the only information you could possibly get from Iceman is if your opponent for some reason has a handful of 6-drops and Iceman says no target. That is the most information you could possibly get out of it. For one energy, I really don't like the thought of knowing exactly what was hit, even if it's something as simple as just showing the animation and showing the pig being a 6/5 or a 6/12 or a 5/0. That's enough information on its own to be like, oh, I know what card that is. Because how many cards that are being run at those exact costs? I think that I'm hoping that's not the case. That's too much.
I asked Lambie this, and I'm curious for everyone's take. If there was a 1/1 printed that said reveal your opponent's hand, I'd play that. Would you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, all day.
So, like, Spider-Ham hits something, right? Let's say it hits Doom. I now know something about my opponent's deck. I know what their capabilities are. I know that a Sanctum reveals I can probably snap. Let's say it hits Heimdall, because I'm playing against Molt, obviously. So it hits Heimdall. I know that, like, I don't have to do that play to the right and left thing, right? Like, or if it hits Doctor Strange, right? Like, now I know it's a move deck that hasn't seen its top end. Like, that information, like, forget the ability. The ability is obviously incredible. But, like, that information I'm going to be able to do so much with, especially in Conquest. Like, if this, and listeners know the answer to this by the time they're hearing this episode, right? But, like, the intent is, as per, I don't know if it was actually Glenn, but it was someone at Second Dinner, that we can see what this hits, that both players can see what this hits. Like, I'd pay 1/1 for that information reasonably often. Like, it's better than Howard.
Yeah, I would argue, yeah, that I agree with that.
I think for most of us who play a lot, we can kind of tell what our opponent's playing by turn 2 anyways. And so I think, as I've thought about it a little bit more, I think Spider-Ham would be amazing against Sarah decks, because Sarah's the most expensive card in there, and that's going to completely shut them down. Over like thinking about the actual big dogs, thinking about the annoying little dog decks where Sarah's the highest cost, and then otherwise you maybe have a 4-drop or something if they're playing Zabu or something along those lines. And so as I've thought about it more, I think Spider-Ham's going to be more versatile in regards to countering those types of decks than the big decks where, like, if I have Magneto and it hits my Magneto, that's actually kind of a buff, unless I was intentionally trying to move the power or whatever. I think it'll be an interesting card, and I'm excited to see how people use it. Boot, you mentioned Moon Girl. That sounds freaking ridiculous, man. That seems
Moon Girl, Absorbing Man, Zabu.
That seems crazy.
Yeah.
So in theory, sorry.
I mean, no, I was just gonna say, even to Molt's point, even if they don't have Sarah yet, and so hitting something like Bishop, for example, is very huge against a deck like a bounce deck and things like that. So yeah, I think the impact of this card can be really good. It's just how well is a slot into those decks.
So in theory, what this pushes then is general good stuff decks, and not really I'm built around a strategy deck, right? Like, if your deck is trying to do Sarah control things, and like the other cards you'd really like to hit is Shang-Chi, right? Like, you hit that Shang fairly often in that matchup. That's amazing. Or you're playing discard and you hit Apocalypse, and now that Sif is just like, oops, bye. Like, all those, like, the cards that rely on a strategy, and that strategy being like, this just takes all of those out, which is sort of the same thing Leech did that ended up causing so much controversy, right? It was just all about getting ahead and locking the game. So
Just play this in a Leech deck with like Scorpion and Iceman and stuff. Like that sounds, I'm not gonna lie, I feel like a bad person, but that sounds like so much fun.
You just gave me terrible ideas.
The first thing I'm gonna do is just a really annoying deck.
All right. Other hammy thoughts?
To double
I'm just
back
excited
about
That's
whether
it.
this card's could be polarizing or not, I think it depends on how much using it repeatedly is a meme or a dream. If it's a meme, I don't necessarily think this card will be that polarizing. But if you can get to turn, say, 5, your turn 5 starts and more than half of the cards in your hand are pigs because your opponent has like spammed out spider hams, I think people are going to quickly sour on this card. You know, they're going to love the first time they play Spider Ham and they tag somebody's Galactus and they're like, yeah, eat bacon. And then, if it eventually that meme becomes a dream, meme becomes a dream, like, then they're like, oh, I can't play my cards. So I think if it stays as kind of like a Shang-Chi for uninteractable big end cards like Doctor Doom and Galactus, not uninteractable, but harder to interact with big expensive cards, I think people will love this card. But I think if this bounce deck or the Scorpion deck that was mentioned earlier becomes like a real meta deck, not just something you run into and you're like, oh, that was cool, I'm going to try to build it, and I lose for 10 ranks because it's actually sucks because it just beat me that one time because they got their nut draw. Like, that's where I think that this card sort of hopefully will land as kind of like a new type of Shang-Chi / Enchantress card versus something that enables like a really oppressive strategy like the Leech decks were, but even to a maybe higher extent.
Do you guys think that this card is better in Conquest than the ladder?
No, because everybody's playing Galactus in ladder. Like, I'll go to ladder just to kind of like get my missions done, and I see a ton of Galactus over there. So I almost feel like it'll be more effective over there. I saw the day Galactus got nerfed, I saw a bunch in Conquest mode, but that kind of got fizzled out. People are just like using High Evolutionary and a couple other meta decks, So those are my thoughts.
I think the idea of hitting the Hulk, though, is more valuable than you give it credit for. Because looking at what I think is the top deck in Conquest right now is the Lockjaw version of High Evo, not the Lockdown. Because that deck has a very good ability of actually going wider than you'd think by first prioritizing your Lockjaw lane and presenting a lot of power there, then putting things like Thor in another lane with like a Jane Foster, then eventually getting Mjolnir down, and then hulking into a separate lane that's like 20 power at that point, because it's very easy to float in that deck and play a little bit off curve to get your Hulk to be big. I've had games where I've hit 30 power in each lane pretty easily, and I think in a lot of games where Hulk would have been a 12 instead of a 20 or an 18 even, would have been a few games that I would have lost. So I don't know. I do think that it's a bit more valuable to hit a Hulk than it seems off face value.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know tomorrow.
Speaking of Conquest, I think that brings us to sort of the next part of our episode where we're going to ask you all, what are your thoughts a week into Conquest? We were lucky enough to be able to talk to, oh my God, last week was not Educated Collins. Last week was
Doug Pie and Yeti,
right? To talk about Conquest and on sort of the even launch when we were only able to play at full games. But you four have spent this week grinding away at Conquest. Where does it sit? So we started with Molt, so I'll start with Boot here. Boot, Conquest or Kong Lame?
Conquest. No, I love it. I've been waiting for something to do post Infinite. And like battle mode, I was really excited for battle mode when it came out, but it just kind of fizzled out for me, just having to find somebody and all that. So it's nice to queue up against other people. And I love that it adds an additional layer of strategy, right? Like as you're learning more about your opponent's deck, you're just locked in there with them, which is sometimes terrible. Brad, I'm sure will mention the sideboard request he has. But yeah, there's just so much more strategy involved. I know. Molt and I, we talk a lot about the RNG and randomness of this game, but it seems like there's a little bit more strategy in this than just going on the ladder, and I can, play multiple rounds with somebody. And I've noticed like I can just retreat like 3-4 times, right? And then once I get my ideal hand, like with a bounce deck, I finally get Kitty on the first draw, like I can go in there and steal some cubes, especially because they have minimal information. But anyways, I could talk about it all day. I do hope that they increase the metal shop a little bit, like give us some more access to variants, or maybe be able to buy more than one ticket, for certain things. But other than that, I'm loving it. And the last thing I'll say is I hope they don't nerf the Proving Grounds. Like it's the only unranked mode that we have where you get some benefits. And I'm tired of people being like, oh, I don't like it. People just go in there, just leave it alone. Let us have our fun. It's the one great thing about this game where we just earn good stuff, just for playing and messing around. Those are my thoughts.
Brad?
So yeah, Chris already said I'm going to request a sideboard in this mode, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. I already know that Glenn answered something in the Ask the Team segment of the Discord about a sideboard and saying that it's already the longest running mode, or at least time consuming mode in the game at the moment, and they don't want to add to that. I find that answer to be a bit weird, because how much time is it really going to add, especially if they do it in a way that makes sense where you're not sideboarding after every single game? That would be excessive, and I don't agree with that. I was thinking once you hit the threshold of someone passing the halfway point or hitting the halfway point in their life total, that's when the game stops for a second. You get 30 seconds each to sideboard and then submit to your next game, and that's your only chance to sideboard. And it doesn't have to be like a bunch of them. It could be 2 to 4 cards is what I'm thinking. It's just with high evo running around, or like if you happen to be an unfortunate player that's trying to do something like Zoo and you're running into someone that's running Killmonger, you don't have armor main deck or Cosmos, something like that, to position yourself in a way to make a 90-10 unfavorable matchup into a 60-40. That goes a long way, and that actually insinuates or exacerbates, I should say, the competitive aspect of the mode, and really test people's intelligence from both a sideboarding and just this is the answer I want to bring in, or creating a sideboard, but as well as the sideboarding against the sideboard that you see in other games. I come from Magic, and that's a really big aspect of like, okay, what do I expect my opponent to bring in to try and counteract what I'm doing or whatever? So how can I counteract what that's doing? Or maybe have a transformative sideboard to really just change up what the deck's doing in general a little bit. Maybe you go from a regular, high evolutionary version of Lockjaw, take that out, and all of a sudden you're a Thanos Lockjaw version out of the sideboard. Something like that could be really valuable and interesting. And I think it's something that would be really nice and appreciative to have into the mode. Otherwise, I like it. And I don't want to complain about the mode. I love the mode in general. I want that competitive itch to be scratched to an extent of really pushing the boundaries of what's going to make the mode the most competitive it can be. And I really believe that a sideboard would do that.
Molt?
Okay, so I think that Conquest is fun, but as somebody who likes to play off meta stuff, I don't think that this is what the game needed at this point. I think I do love the fact that I get to get revenge on somebody. It's always so annoying to me when I'm on the ladder and somebody spams emotes because they barely won and they drew everything and I drew nothing. And so the fact that I get to hop into something that lasts a lot longer, I get to learn more about my opponent. I get to trick them, outplay them, all that kind of stuff, which is what brings me so much joy with playing off meta decks, is catching people off guard and outplaying them. You get to do that and kind of get better at it as it goes. And as Boot mentioned too, like the number of times that I've retreated 5 games in a row and then ended up winning is like a lot. And that's where there's strategy, not only in the gameplay, but also in like, is it worth it or not to stick in this? Because a lot of times you get lazy on the ladder and you're just like, whatever, I want to see what happens. You can't do that in Conquest mode. You have to be to the point where you're like, okay, I'm in this for the long haul, and I might risk it when I have 4 cubes left and see if I can like hit black or something and like get them down a whole bunch. But for me, it's not what I think the game needed to reach a broader audience, if you will. I desperately want a draft mode in the game.
Yes.
That's like the biggest thing that I
Mhm.
argue for.
Agreed.
And I honestly think that a lot of times draft is more competitive and shows your knowledge of the game more so than hopping in and just playing high evo lockjaw, which is what I do in Conquest. I don't play meta, but in Conquest, I'm like, okay, if you're going to force me to play meta, then I'm going to. So I just go into Conquest. I'm like, I'm going to play the best deck. And since I'm better than half of these people, I'm just going to mess around and laugh and have fun and not have to overthink it. But when I'm on the ladder and I want to overthink it, that's when I'm going to make my own off meta decks and whatnot. But if they had dropped Conquest mode with draft, like Legends of Runeterra had, forgot what it was called. They had a mode like that. Then I think that it would be like really, really good. Maybe you can go into the Conquest tab and you can choose draft or regular. I would just spend all my time in draft because I think that it's
Hell yeah.
shows a lot more of your knowledge of the game as a whole than just of a certain archetype or a certain meta that people are playing.
So I do want draft and I don't want sideboard. I think it's not that I don't like sideboards in general. It's that no,
Get 'em,
it's
Brad.
you
Get 'em.
can get them. I think that the issue is like that this mode says don't play things that have weaknesses or like build your deck for that. You can't just bring whatever you want, which I mean, this is sort of meant to mimic like a high level tournament. And like I understand you could have a sideboard in a high level tournament, obviously. But like I like the fact that you have to really consider what to bring. And it sucks that the best deck is so clear, right? Like that we all sort of like we're gonna talk about it later, but like that we all sort of know the best deck, so it's not fun. But like I've got an 83 win percent with my bounce deck right now, and well, in both modes, but like in Conquest, and like a lot of that is I'm like it ain't fancy. It's the freaking it's like both the it's a greedy version of the Lambie deck and then just the Lambie deck, right? Like I'm not doing anything fancy. It's just Shang-Chi's real good.
Mhm.
But like, so I don't want to get into the later Conquest stuff now. I'm going to say for starting points, I really love Battlegrounds. I think Battlegrounds is extremely well designed, extremely fun. I love that it's free. I love that it gives you rewards that you
Talking
can
about
get
Proving
things that you
Grounds?
couldn't. Proving. Thank you. Sorry. Oh, I wrote Battlegrounds. I suck at things. All right, whatever. Yeah, I don't know how to type. Whatever. It's been a long day, guys. All right, but I really, really love Proving Grounds. I think that it's fantastically designed. I think not only is it's low stakes but has stakes, so you can still learn things about how to play and your decks. I've tried strategies that I wouldn't otherwise try. I've tried decks that I wouldn't otherwise try. I know that I'm going to get like a bunch of reps in a row against meta stuff, and I think that Proving, not Battle Grounds, is fantastically designed, and I think some of the most like fun I've had playing the game, to the point where I very rarely am even using, like I've collected like upwards of 15 to 20 silver and gold tickets without like paying attention to them, just because like I don't care. I'm really, really loving playing Proving
Mhm.
Grounds, and so I just keep going back to it.
All right. Oh,
I
go ahead,
mean,
Brad.
when it comes to the not wanting a sideboard, I get it. And I actually been wanting, like outside of Conquest, I would prefer it to be the same way that Molt wants other modes like Draft and Limited in general, which I think is a must for any competitive card game whatsoever. Should always have a limited mode, sealed,
Yes.
draft, whatever that may look like, a cube, something like that. Very much needed, because not only does it expand your player base, it expands your content creation as well. Again, I come from Magic, so I see content creation across the board. You have limited content creators, you have constructed content creators, commander content creators, and they all have their own little niche. The reason I really want sideboards in some kind of mode is because as it stands right now, you mentioned that you did really well with bounce, right? Well, bounce just turns out to be a very good counter and has a very good matchup against the Lockjaw Evo deck, because you're able to pivot away from that Lockjaw lane to where they're going to put in a lot of their power anyway, and focus your powers on the actual other two lanes and really pivot to where you want to go. You have the flexibility of stopping that, and that's great. However, it really showcases and kind of puts a spotlight on the rock paper scissors element that Conquest kind of is at the moment. You're going to have a handful of top decks that are going to perform the best, because, like you said, you don't want to bring something that's going to have flaws. And for the most part, I would argue that Bounce and the Haiva variants of decks, whether it's Lockdown or Lockjaw, don't have a lot of flaws because they're able to attack the game on multiple different axes. By having a sideboard, it gives other decks a fighting chance to actually showcase what they can do in flexible spots. And right now, it's just, did you bring this deck or did you bring this deck? And I don't think that's a very good thing. And that even leads into balance issues later on, because like, I haven't played the ladder too much. I don't know how pulverizing that Haivo is on the normal ladder, which is what I feel like Marvel Snap is going to, really balance their game around, right? I don't want them to necessarily balance their game around Conquest and then mess up other game modes along the way. So it makes for this awkward spot of like, what do they do regarding different decks, where honestly, a simple inclusion of a way to give people more tools to combat decks could stop them from even having to make these awkward balance changes that aren't super necessary in the first place.
Okay, fair enough. Can we take 2 more questions before I move on quickly? How do you feel about the snap on turn 1 thing that everyone's been doing, or that people like Cam are promoting in Proving Grounds?
I'm about it.
Like I said, I love it. I love it so much, and I don't know why people have issues with it. Like, go in, have fun. Like, you guys, every single person listening, like, how tilted do you get on the ranked ladder, right? Right? Just like, even if you don't care about rank, just seeing your rank drop just drives you nuts, right? Losing to random stuff. How many games end in a 50-50? Oh, I placed my card here instead of here, so I lost, right? And there's no escape from it. There's just no escape. And now we have something, right? And people are like, I don't know. I don't know if I like that. Like, just let us have some fun. Just let us have one little sandbox where we can play around, have some fun, earn some medals, get some garbage from the metal shop, and get on with our lives, But I will say one thing. Even though I'm a huge advocate for keeping it as is, I do agree with people who are saying, like, don't shame the people who do want to just play Proving Grounds like the quote unquote right way. Like, yeah, I don't think that's cool, because that is a place for people to practice their snapping and new decks, and you know what I mean? So, like, if somebody doesn't do it, I'm like, that sucks, but whatever. You know what I mean? But yeah,
I mean,
so let
that's
them do their
Molt's
thing.
dream, right? Like, Molt was talking about like the revenge aspect of it. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm playing Proving Grounds and we do that, initial snap, and then someone gets down to 2 cubes, and like, let's say I get down to 2 cubes, and then my opponent starts emote spamming me. I am not snapping at all now, and I'm sticking it out, and I am making you work for this. It is
game face.
so fun in that regard. And when you come back in Proving Grounds when it doesn't really mean anything, but you made them stick around for like 20 more minutes than they wanted to, just because they emote spammed you, I will be that petty. I will come back against you.
To counter sort of a little bit what Cam and Boo were playing here, like, there needs to be a space though for people with low stakes to learn how to snap properly, right? And it's not the ladder, right? And if the culture becomes, it's shameful to not actually play the mode the way you're supposed to, and people start feeling that social pressure that, I want to get better at this in a low stakes way, right? Because silver tickets, may not be to the people on this panel very valuable resource, right? But to somebody who's a mediocre or worse snapper, right, they need a space to be able to figure out, like, how do you snap in conquest mode, right? Like, I've got no problem with sort of Cam's concept of like a conquest communism, I think is what he said in like a short or a video or whatever. I'm not against that per se, but I think there's a danger of it like getting in the way of what Proving Grounds actually is supposed to be, which is a jumping on point to a different way of approaching how to play the game than ladder is. Because even if you are snapping properly on the ladder, it is different than snapping properly in conquest. Right. And as we've talked about repeatedly on the show with repeated guests, there's different betting logic, different consequences for how you snap. And if we take away where maybe you're only able to learn how to snap in 1 out of every 4 games, that is slower than it could be if people were playing the mode. And I know people have this complaint about Proving Ground games taking too long. I don't understand this, but like, if you need to take a shit and play Marvel Snap, there's still the ladder. Like, you don't have to like, if you can't watch a Marvel Instagram reel or a YouTube short, from Bootman or whatever, when you're taking a shit, you have to play a Marvel Snap game. Like, They're still the ladder.
But my only question is, like, because I've thought about this, like, doesn't it just kind of turn Silver Conquest into Proving Grounds, right? If we're all just messing around, having fun in Proving Grounds, you just rack up a mountain of silver tickets, and like silver, I play for real, right? Like I'm snapping, retreating on point. So like silver is where I'm practicing. Gold is where I take it even more seriously. You know what I mean? Like I do understand what you're saying. Like it is the place for people to practice, but with people just snapping back and forth, you're gonna get lucky and get at least 5 to 10 silver tickets, I feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I do think there should be a place for people to actually practice seriously. But I'm just like, you can do that in silver now. Just do it in silver, you know?
I think that's fair, even if you're like pretty bad, right? Like, let's say you win 40% of your games. You're not really that good at Snap. You win 40% of your games. You play 10 Proving Ground games. You got 4 silver tickets. Cool. And they took you very little time because of the Snap thing. The one thing I do want to say, though, is if no one is emote spamming anyone and you do the Snap thing and you lose 8 on round 1, just go away. Just concede. Like, I didn't do anything to piss you off. Just go away.
You hear that, Brad?
No, we're not. Like,
Brad?
if I emote spam him, which is what he said, I deserve it, right? Like, emote spammers are like the lowest form of life.
Yeah.
We all know that, right? Like what the hell, man? Like, what is wrong with you? But like, if you're not emote spamming, you do the hey snap fist bump at the end of the game when the 8 cubes are done. You do the fist bump. Like the fist bump is perfectly respectable, and then you're like, all right, cool, let's go on with our life. Let's play another game. And you're like, no, let's do the rest of this. And it's just like, I'm gonna come back.
The slippery slope requesting this because, like, again, where do you draw the line from someone who genuinely just really wants to just get their reps in the proper way on Proving Grounds,
and then they don't have to snap back that first round, right? Like then they're getting their reps in just fine.
Well, maybe they were just really confident that one time. Like, I understand.
No, I mean maybe they thought they had a great hand and I beat that 50-50, right? Like
yeah. Because
because they're bad at the game, right?
Okay, hold on. I have had people before tell me that I must be bad at snapping if I've lost 50-50 games. And it's like that's just silly, especially when before Conquest on like the ladder. It's best of 1. What do you want me to do? I'm pretty confident in my hand. I'm going to stick it out for the 8 cubes. Oh, okay, Chris, you played Hulk in the left lane instead of the middle lane, which I don't know why you're playing the Hulk in the left lane. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? You're playing wrong. That's the thing that bothers me about losing 50-50 sometimes. It's like the better play that I can see. I'm like, yeah, it's so simple. They have to play here. Then they play there. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why does that work for you? It's like when you play like if you're playing Call of Duty or like Rainbow Six Siege and someone's in a place you don't expect and you're like, why are you here? Why are you in this corner? What are you doing? It's like that same concept. So like, it's just people can play how they want. And if that's unfortunate, hey, you know what? If you don't want to stay out for the entire rest of the game Proving Grounds, you can leave too. You can concede.
I'm not going to.
I'm
just going to snap the
time.
next game and beat you, which is like 90% of the time what happens. But Molt, you get to be the final arbiter here. Decide who's right. He's like, no, what? Yeah, that's what you get.
I mean, I give a thumbs up and snap every time, and then I leave if I lose. But it depends on. I do agree with the whole spamming thing, but at the same time, if somebody spams me that much, do I want to waste 20 minutes beating them, or do I want to just go back into another one and get my tickets or whatever? I guess it depends. If I lose to a Galactus deck on the first thing, then I'm going to stick around and beat them and show them that they're not good at the game. But it's situational. And I do agree that like, because silver is only 2, like that's a great place to practice. I do take that one seriously. I think that obviously Proving Grounds wasn't designed to be a place where you pretty much just go in and laugh and snap and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, but it's good. Like I feel like it's good for the game. And it's a good place to kind of, I don't know. I feel like it takes some of the pain away from losing in situations like that, because you're both just like throwing your money on the table and you're like, oh, okay, cool. And then you start taking it seriously afterwards. At least that's me. But I do agree with the fact that there are other people who maybe aren't as skilled or don't play as much and they want to take Proving Ground seriously. And in that regard, then I would say like, don't snap back at the beginning and just stick to it and see See if you can figure it out. Maybe you choose to
Mhm.
snap later on in that one match or whatever. But I don't know. I don't think it's that serious of a thing that people need to argue about it. Like, it is what it is.
We're too reasonable. As always, the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
I will.
Real
I will
quick.
say-
Real quick.
Go ahead,
I
Chris.
can't move on without just bringing this up. How annoying is it that you have to mute somebody in
Yep.
between every
Fix
single
that
round?
You should
immediately.
be able to auto mute. Yeah.
It feels like Second Dinner is purposely trolling us. Like, there's no like perma mute button. You can't like mute a certain person forever, and then they're like, "Hey, here's Conquest," and you have to remember to mute them at the beginning of every round. I feel like it's very intentional on their end.
I feel
With
like
all the
they
conspiracies
It's
like
about
intentional in the
Second
sense that
Dinner.
they didn't program
think
the
they like
game
it.
to make it easy for them to do that, and so they haven't done it. Like, it's intentional in the sense that they didn't build the game that way. I think, and they just don't care enough.
They're trying to trigger me.
I get
Roy,
you. I also
just
find
me.
it annoying, but like, you can also see. So there's moments where you can see this through into the like widgets and how it's like, oh, they clearly didn't program this. They didn't expect to be doing this.
It took Clash Royale like 5 years to do that,
Yeah.
to do an auto mute. So
like,
Mhm.
you would think at this
Oh,
point,
man.
game developers would put in an auto mute, but they also spent all those resources building the emotes. So
Right.
like, they want you to see them. So
Yeah,
they're gonna start selling us emotes at some point.
and
so.
I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure someone at Second Dinner would basically try to tell you that we did not intend for Kamala's emote to be, like BMing and stuff. And I'm like, did really? Look at her. Like, you made
Yeah.
her the most smug emote you possibly could. As far as like, I think she's worse than the Thanos one. At least the Thanos one, I'm like, that just feels flavorful. I suppose, like, it makes sense to me when you're using it in that manner. But I do want to ask, how do you guys feel about the screen, win or lose, by the way, after every conquest that shows conquest not failed? What does it say? Like
not
left or
Incomplete,
incomplete, something like that.
incomplete or whatever. Both winning and losing, I don't like the screen because it takes so long to click through all of them.
Oh, come on.
Like, it's it feels unnecessary.
The
I
Burger
know
King
it's
crown. You
nitpicking.
get a
I
little
really
Burger
understand.
King crown, and then you get to be like,
Then just show me the Burger King crown, and that's it. You don't need to show me this huge blue or red screen that I have
the
to wait
losing
5
one
seconds for the
is
animation to
bad
finish.
feels. Like, the
And
losing
slow.
one, they should just kick you to the lobby. Like, it's just like,
Especially when you just had 2 wins in gold, and on the third one you get beat. It's like,
like,
okay,
thanks.
thanks.
Like, that one should just go away. But I mean, the victory one, whatever. You won. Yay! Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's too much. Like, there's the the little Burger King crown. It also shows your avatar bumping heads with their avatar, and then you get the blue or the red screen. I get it. I get the results. I
on.
can see.
You just start
like-
humming the Final Fantasy victory music at the end of every. It'll feel so much better.
if the victory music was better, it might make it more palpable. That is true.
What do you hum when you lose then? What is your, like, how do you
That
make that
needs
feel
womp
better?
womp.
There should be, like, if you lose, don't rub it in. Look, here's how I get my takes on Marvel Snap. It pisses Nina off, so I'm not for it. Done.
That's everything in the
No.
game. Haven't
No.
you been on Reddit?
No. What? She's amazing. But yeah, no, if it pisses Nina off, I'm not for it. And she hates the losing screen, so the losing screen has to go. Nice and easy.
I find it interesting from like a psychological standpoint, because you notice that when you win in the ladder and it shows the cubes go up in a fairly, not slow, but like slower pace when you gain cubes. But when you lose cubes, it's sped up about 2 or 3 times the speed, because they don't want you to sit around and focus on the losing aspect. And it's like, oh, you didn't even notice how many cubes you lost for a moment. But then the losing screen for Conquest is longer than the winning screen or winning cube rate that you get in ladder. I find that very weird that they seemingly go against their own philosophy when it comes to the psychological component of the
Because
game. It's just the one thing I've
built
noticed.
Conquest while the game was out, and they didn't have this game was in development for 5 years, like 5 years to workshop everything. Like, you could definitely tell some parts of
That's
this
my
game they really workshopped for like a long time. And I do think like when you lose and how you gain and all of that interface is like really designed to create as few feel bad things as possible. Conquest, they clearly slapped together because they needed a more competitive mode, and you can really see the seams in a lot of the different things that will hopefully get better over time.
All right, let's talk a little specifically about silver and gold. Are there any thoughts that weren't covered earlier in the earlier conversation that you have about silver and gold? Any specific strategies? What do you think about MMR mattering less the higher rank, the higher up you go? What do you feel about all of these things? Let's start with Brad, because we started with Boot and Molt. So, Brad, your turn.
Well, the MMR thing I'm fine with. I think it's nice to like it cares a little bit, proving grounds. Then and as you go up, it starts to not try to match you up as much as the ladder does in terms of collection level. Because again, at the end of the day, it is a competitive leaning mode. So if you are just getting into pool 3 or like in that pool 2.5 territory that we like to talk about, you're choosing to to hop into these this kind of mode. So it's not supposed to be for the faint of heart, so to speak, right? At least that's the intention behind any of these kind of modes. But otherwise, I think the construction of silver and gold, I think, is nice. I do like it. And as far as strategies go, just it's a completely different beast in general. As far as snapping, we've kind of touched on that a little bit. Bluffing is a lot more viable in this mode than it is in ladder, because your opponent has seen what you potentially could have in spots. A good example I can give you real quick is I was playing a deck that had the Hood in it, and then Bar with No Name came up in one game, and my opponent had seen me play Hood because this is like game 5 or whatever, and I was gonna play like not Sentinel, but like what's the 410
Sentry?
Sentry.
blanking out. Sentry, yes. I was gonna play Sentry mid, win that lane, and then play Hood over on Bar with No Name. So I snapped. Thing was, I didn't have Hood. I just bluffed it, and they retreated because they saw me play Hood 4 or 5 different times earlier. So bluffing is a more viable strategy in this mode. But it's the whole you live by the sword, die by the sword kind of thing, right? So be ready to take your punches at the same rate.
Molt?
I'll go. Overall thoughts, I think it's good. I think that it's fun. I think the progress of each of them and kind of giving you a break from proving grounds to silver to gold is good. I'll be interested to see how infinite feels or whatever. Is that what it's called? Is it?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Infinity.
It's just infinity. Yeah. I didn't know if it was infinite or infinity.
Yeah.
You have a point on here about how do you feel about no losses. So the thing that I mentioned earlier with Legends of Runeterra was called expeditions. And if you lost 2 in a row, then you were out. If you lost 1, then you stayed where you were and you got to like give yourself another chance. I'm going to be interested to see how it feels in Infinity if you're just like making it to 4 every time or something like that. If it's just going to be like a huge bummer. Because like that's a lot of games to win in a row. That's probably going to be like it just feels like a lot, because sometimes gold feels like a lot right now, especially because people are taking gold more seriously. So you're going to have a lot of 30, 45 minute games against people where you're focusing a lot and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how Infinity feels. Strategies and tips, again, like I think taking your time and retreating is so important, because not only does that give you like longer to draw into what you want, but it also can give your opponent false confidence, which is extremely important. Kind of like what you said, Brad, about being able to bluff people. The same thing happens with false confidence. If somebody just thinks that they've got you on the ropes and you've retreated 4 or 5 games, if you've retreated 5 games for 1 and then you beat them 1 for 4, like you're back in it. And then they're stressed out because they just lost 4 in 1. So they're now have lost all their confidence and you've gained your confidence. So patience is going to be incredibly important in silver, sure, but gold especially. Like you have to be patient. You can't risk anything. If you see it going for 4 and you don't feel confident, you need to just be patient and back out and know that could be 2 other games for 1 that you could hop into. So that's the biggest thing, and that's tough for me, man, because I've got ADD. I just want to get through it, man. I don't want to wait, but it's really important to do that kind of thing.
So, I'll go then. You Boot. That cool? So
Sounds good.
Don't know why, because I'm not like I keep checking my stats. I don't really keep stats on ladder because who fucking cares? You have infinite cubes, right? But I keep stats on Conquest, and my stats are like really good, like way better than they are on ladder because I pay more attention. But I don't understand why, but the no losses thing makes playing the higher ranks, silver and gold, makes me feel icky, and I don't know why. It just feels gross. It's stressful and long
Uh-huh.
and sweaty, and I don't like it. Give me like 5 games to get 4 wins or 3 wins, right? Give me like do something else so I don't feel gross. Don't make me feel like I wasted my time because I lost that last 1 cube on a 50-50 at the end of like and if I'm like at the end of a gold run at the end of like 2-3 hours of my time, right? Like, and I can't go do a proving grounds in between to like clear my head or anything. I have to stick in the same spot. Like, it's icky and I don't like it. And like that's the one big thing I want them to fix. As far as strategies, play good decks, snap aggressively, and don't be afraid to retreat when you snap more often than not. If you snap on like turn 3 and they snap back to you, like, yeah, screw you, peace. Thanks for letting me know. Right? Like I'm snapping aggressively, and if they're just sitting there to play it out for 4, I feel real confident because that means they weren't confident enough to snap me back, right? And I was confident enough to snap, which means I'm real favored in that match. And it's like these real easy wins in these games because like I snapped and you stayed in because you were like, I think I could maybe beat this, and I'm like, no, I've got like really good stuff now. That's why I snapped. You weren't confident you could beat me, so you didn't. And like once in a while, that'll lead to an 8 that I lose, right? Like where I'll be like, I don't think they actually have this, or I'll lose a 4. But I can come back from losing a 4, right? Losing an 8 is obviously usually it. But like if you are winning, if you are strong, I've watched Lambie playing 8,000 tournaments at this point just through commentary and because I like watching him play. And like it'll be like turn 2 and he'll be like, whoa, I have this cool combo and this location is revealed, snap. And like half the time that's just like opponents like, all right, snap back. And he's no thanks though. I wasn't that fevered. Bye. And like it's such a great way to get a good feel for your opponent, what they're playing, how they're playing, and win more games.
Yeah. I used to play a ton of poker. And that's one of the things that drew me to Snap and the whole snapping mechanic. But I quickly learned that unranked, just and I know there's a controversial opinion, but just snapping is not as serious in ranked. It was the only mode. Like, how many times did someone snap you or snap you back? And like you get to the end of turn 6 and you're like, you had garbage. Like, what were you doing? What was going through your head where you thought it was a good idea to do this? Now in Conquest mode, it's completely different. Like, just to echo what you're all saying, like there's just mind games you can play, being patient, right? All these things, getting information. I do play more in my style of poker, like in Conquest mode, because the whole idea is you're raising the stakes when you're like, I have something really good, and if you want to see this, you're gonna have to stay in. You're gonna have to pay up too, right? And in Conquest mode, once you get past the proving grounds, people are more likely to fall back, right? You're not gonna let them see what their next draw is or get some random pull. Like, they're gonna have to pay if they want to see that next card. And I love that. But also like Molt saying, like that patience and the mind games, like I've noticed this. Like, if say I have just bad hands 3 rounds in a row and I retreat for one life each, that person starts getting even more aggressive with their snapping. It's that gambler's fallacy, right? Like, oh, I just had 3 great hands causing them to retreat, so I must be favored this round too. And then you just come out with your strongest stuff and you'll snatch up 8 cubes from them, I just really, really, really enjoy the strategy of it all. Personally, I've only been farming silver and mainly silver. I haven't played through gold yet just because I haven't had the time. I really want to sit down and play all of them. So like all the bad feels that everybody's talking about, I haven't got there yet, but I'm sure it will be heartbreaking. But as you were talking, Glazer, like, I don't know what the solution is, right? Like, is there a floor? Because in Infinity, you got to win 5. Like, maybe after 3, like, do you have to lose 2? I don't know what that looks like, because in gold, it's only 3. So how would they adjust something like that. You know what I mean?
So two things. One, I'll tell you my plan. Sorry, Roy. I'll tell you my plan for Infinity right now is to just run through it. If I win it, I win it. If I lose it, I lose it. I'm going to invest no emotional energy into it. I don't think I could mentally freaking take it. It just sounds like a circle of hell. Thing two, people, if I played Invisible Woman, like, listeners, stop playing your, like, Hulk into my Invisible Woman lane. You know that's a Shang-Chi, right? Like, what are you doing? Please stop. Please. Like, Invisible Woman is like the best card in this mode, right? Like, of all the cards that like have a difference, Invisible Woman is so strong because no one knows what they're doing against it.
Doesn't she have like decreased value as the rounds go on though? Because I keep seeing people toss a like Invisible Woman in the Patriot deck and stuff like that. I'm like, well, by like round 2, like Molt said earlier, like if you're half decent at the game, you know what they're playing, right? Like if I see you like reveal Patriot at the end, I'm like, okay, you're a Patriot.
So ready?
Sick.
So it's game 3 and we've gone relatively 50-50, but you struggle when I see Patriot. I drop Invisible Woman, and behind my Invisible Woman, it's now turn 3, and I have played Dazzler, and I snap. And you're like, well, if they've got Patriot, I'm screwed. What do you do?
Yeah, no, it can get tricky. I haven't gone up against it yet, but I feel like I'd be like, I think I know the range here.
Sure.
You know,
but the
maybe
range
not.
is literally nothing to I win this game immediately.
True.
So to double back,
Sounds like people just need to be more creative.
to double back on
That's
sort
it.
of
Be more creative with your decks.
two things here, I think. One is, what is folks' solutions to this sort of you don't make it to, say, 5 with Infinite, right? Like, is it that the crown shop needs to be increased in its value? So if you go 4-1, yeah, you don't get the nice, cool little avatar thing, but you are paid out to the point where you feel like you got something of value, whether that lets you buy gold or a booster, or not booster, sorry, like a variant or something like that, right? Or you get a variant, right? Or like, because related to this point is, I think that the discourse around Conquest to me proves that people don't know what they want ever in life, because all people did, including people on this podcast that are here, is want a more competitive Marvel Snap mode. And here's a more competitive Marvel Snap mode that, like, in the later stakes, like later in Silver, Gold, and especially Infinite, there are real stakes as far as you can for a game where you're not actually betting any money. Like, as much as within the context of Marvel Snap, there's real stakes. And there's a lot of reporting that people don't like it, or it takes too long, or all of these sort of like things that come with the additional stakes and sort of intentionality that isn't when you have the sort of ladder, which also had its own feel bad moments. So I think that there's a lot of really interesting sort of psychological stuff that Boot likes to talk about here going on with how we talk about Conquest, which is tied again to this point. Like, how do you reduce those feel bad feelings? Is it making that crown shot more valuable? Is it there being, particularly in Infinite, internal rewards where you get mystery variants if you get 2 mystery variants if you make it to 4 wins, 1 if you make it to 3, some collector's tokens or something, like these sort of things that, yeah, you go 4-1, you don't get the super rare Infinite background, but you get something else that's like, okay, it's like, finishing second in a tournament or finishing 4th. Yes, I didn't make it to 1st, but I still feel really good because I feel great because top 4 is great. Like, that is the thing you can say to yourself.
The Magic Arena solution, right?
Which is
like
literally what I just described.
No,
you get rewards.
Yeah,
because they also do
like,
that.
But
if you look at your rewards track, it goes up.
I know. But like, the Magic Arena solution is the solution, I think. Just make it so it's not all or nothing. Make it so like there's levels.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I've played in poker tournaments, and like, if you don't win, you don't win, and like poker tournaments could take all day. But yeah, like what you're talking about, there is a 2nd, 3rd, 4th place. There's some kind of consolation. You're like, okay, I beat out all these other people. I am one of the top people. Here's a little something. You know what I mean? So I think that that might be good.
So we sort of already covered this. We're okay with this slide?
Well, just real quick, but I just want to be clear, because I don't think we're really like talking through that they do what Glazer just said. Like, this is a variant of the 4 Infinite. If you look, this is a variant of what Magic Arena does, where if you make it to 4 wins, you get 250 crowns. But what this discussion seems to be, we're not like actually saying, is 250 crowns isn't worth a lot, right? So to create something that reduces the feel bad, we need the crown shop needs to be upgraded. So that's what I'm trying to push us on, right? Because it's really easy to sort of say we need to up rewards, but there's sort of like that would be to create a better shop. And to up bad feelings where, okay, yeah, I got 4th place, but I got 500 crowns, which lets me buy, halfway to that terrible Carnage Green Goblin variant or another Infinite ticket or what.
Oh, you don't like it?
I hate all Carnage dies variants. Like, I hate Carnage in general and Venom, but I especially hate Carnage. I especially hate like Carnage dies characters.
As characters?
Like,
the symbiotes? Why? Because they're scary?
No,
Is it because they're
stupid.
scary?
Like, Maximum Carnage is one of the stupidest comics I've ever read in my life. I read it when it was coming out at the time. I went to the comic book store every week to read that stupid thing, and it was terrible.
But the introduction of Cletus Cassidy in general, and the birth of Carnage, so to speak, in that breakout scene of prison is one of the best things I've read.
We will agree to disagree, my friend.
We are not going to spend an hour on Carnage because we only have like 20 more minutes of boot.
Oh.
So we will have we will do a Gaiden episode of just fighting about Carnage. Deal. So I have a theory on what you should be able to buy infinitely. It should be expensive as crap. But what you should be able to buy infinitely is a mystery pixel variant.
I would do it just to make sure I never
do
get
it to
anymore.
get rid of the pixels out of your collection. So you get the mystery pixel variant. Like A, like Roy would be thrilled because he loves pixels, right? And B, like players that don't want pixels now don't have to worry about their like mystery shops elsewhere being pixels.
Why not just make it so man, I wish they would do stuff for like other games do. Like I used to play a lot of Smite, for example, and if you guys have ever played League of Legends, stuff like that, same concept applies. I love for them to have like better bundles of different variants, but rather just be like, okay, here's an exorbitant amount of gold you have to spend that's like equivalent to $100 to get a variant, and then cool, you get some tokens and stuff. Have me just pay a flat rate of like $40 and give me every pixel variant if I wanted it, or like every noir variant, or every noir variant that's ever going to come out. Just give me cool deals like that. And better yet, do that for cards too. How many of you and how many of the listeners do you think would pay a monthly subscription service fee additional to the season pass of like $10-$20, where it's just like you have every card as long as you have the subscription?
But the problem is that's so much less than they're making off that now.
Then inflate cosmetics more. They should pick a lane, right? Instead of doing both.
I think that's reasonable. I think we're in a healthier game if cosmetics, not card acquisition, are how they make their money. But I would assume based on their behavior, and I think it's important to note this, and I think Roy's going to yell at me about this, that they're not making enough off cosmetics, and that's why they're making us pay for cards when that has not been their model prior. Like they're trying to make us pay extra for cards, I think, because people aren't quite giving them enough money for cosmetics.
Yeah,
that's impossible to prove.
Could be,
perhaps.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not going to yell at
that,
you,
or they're very, very, very greedy, right? Like,
and that's also
I lean more towards the latter.
Both of those could be that could be true, right?
All right, Molt knows the answer. What's the answer?
Yeah,
you get all the hard questions. Sorry.
Wait, what's the answer to what?
What's the answer? Are they just not making enough off of cosmetics, so they're trying to get us to pay money for cards, or are they just being greedy and like, why not just make money off both?
I think when it comes to cosmetics, we need to have a little bit more customization within the cosmetics that we like. And I don't know how that would deal with monetization or whatever, but I think that I was talking about this on my stream earlier. They need to have, or I think it'd be great if they had universal boosters. So you don't just get random ones. You can get ones that you can put on any card. And it's like, cool. Every once in a while, you get 50 universal boosters. You can choose where you put it. And then that could also encourage people to buy some of those other. I know a lot of times the variant deals or whatever come with boosters for those cards, but you still can't upgrade them that much. But I think the more customization you can get around the variants and the cosmetics that you get, the more likely people will be to buy things. I think if we can make our own avatars in the game from our variants by like screenshotting them, things like that, like different ways that people can make themselves unique. I think back in the day to Call of Duty where people could like put stuff on their guns or whatever, they would go in and like spend hours just using these shapes to do stuff. And I think that if you can make things more custom to yourself, then you would get more people spending money on cosmetics, like going back and choosing frames. Like there are some things I don't upgrade because I like the fact that the border matches and I don't want to have to go over to the infinite one. And I think that all of that could kind of be like a snowball effect to getting people to spend more money on cosmetics if a cosmetic has more of a broad editability from the person who buys it or whatever.
Very cool idea.
All right,
like those 300 gold. What's it called? Like, you've seen like the ones that's like here's 250 credits for 300 gold, and like you get 5 random 65 booster things. I would absolutely buy those way more often if I could choose where those 5 booster things went towards.
They'd make a killing off of that.
Like that'd be amazing. Exactly.
It's like, not costing them anything by doing that.
No, they're shooting themselves in the foot by doing weird things with their cosmetic choices and their bundles.
But 3 times value.
Like, you know, like yeah, of course. And I would love to pay for 3 times value if I felt like I was getting the 3 times value.
They put that on the wrong one.
That's so great. It's also on. Did y'all notice? Hang on. Because I love Carolus. Did you notice? Look at the slide. It's the best part of it.
Oh, I did.
Now, is it times the value because there's 3 guests on? Is
I
that
mean,
the idea?
no. No, but Carolus did tell me that because I was like, we should put the 3 times value. Like we were just talking, and I was like, there's no way he's gonna do it. And then he sent it back, and I was like, this is amazing, and I love it so much.
Awesome.
All right. Any final thoughts about
the joke, Aaron? Yeah, that's what we need to do. Is
thanks, Ray.
Is Infinite. So Infinite opens in 2 weeks, right? Or is 2 weeks, right? Oh, a week and a half, I guess. Kind of next cycle, right?
Oh yeah, next week.
And what do we think? Are we excited? Do we think there's gonna be issues?
There's gonna be a lot of complaining. Yes. Be a lot of people that like that are like, and I know that's the easy cop out answer, I suppose, but because that's what any community loves to do is complain. Coming from, again, Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, all that stuff. Everyone complains. It's how communities work and how they bond together. But people are probably not thinking through, the ones that are trying to hoard their gold tickets at the moment to or infinite tickets, to get multiple runs through when it comes out next week. I don't think they're quite thinking through how daunting of a task this is going to be. And if their data represents what is it? It's 1% or whatever, something like that, of people that actually hit infinite in the game based on the entire player base, it's going to be 0.1% that do this in Conquest. I have no doubt in my mind. This is going to be just a living hell. Glazer, I know you said it's going to be like literally the circles of hell when you try to go through it, and you can't mentally prepare for that. So you're not going to put in any emotional effort whatsoever. But like, it really is like anyone that comes from competitive gaming, like I've played through so many RCQs and stuff like that for Magic, and those are incredibly stressful. And guess what? I can lose two matches. If I go 7-2 in an RCQ, I'm making top 8 and I can play it out. I can even maybe sneak in a 6-3, but I have to go 5-0, and we're not even talking about how many games within Infinite you have to play for each match. If you go the distance on like 2 of those matches, you're playing potentially 50 plus games individually in this mode. That sounds horrible. And I've already decided I don't care about the Infinite Border. It's bragging rights, and that's it. I do not care. I will try.
Ready?
But that's it.
Given that, like, just real quick, Molt and Chris, do you mostly agree? Like that this is going to be torture?
No, like
not as much. Go ahead.
With what Brad just said about the 1% of people hitting infinite, and it's going to be a 10th, like that just fuels me. I'm like, God, I want that freaking border, yeah, because you think about it, like that's what it is. Like, think about like when we were all complaining about the terrible infinite rank rewards. Like, here's a title, here's a name title. We're like, you give us a card back or we're gonna riot. Right? Like, there's just something about like having that thing that stands out so people know your big old accomplishment. I don't know. I need the approval from others just so bad. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take the day off work and just play those games.
I definitely do want it, but it is going to be extremely daunting. Like, I'm not going to stream it. I'm not going to do it in any sense that, like, that's the thing, especially for content creators. I don't imagine a single content creator doing the entire run on like live or anything like that. Not a chance. They're going to tilt.
Lambie's doing it. Are you kidding? Lambie's doing
it. I can't imagine the added pressure that adds as well in regards to entertaining people while you do it and talking and stuff. But
wait, you should you should stream it on our podcast because we don't do video, so people could just hear you react. No,
dude, I've jumped into some streams where people are playing Conquest, and it is literally the boringest thing I've ever seen. Like, most creators are just so focused, you know what I mean? Like, it takes that like mental energy. So yeah, I'm curious to see how Lambie does. But Lambie's used to playing a lot of battle mode on stream. Like, he streams like his tournaments, doesn't he?
He doesn't. I think Browday does.
No,
but Lambie usually, at least in my experience of casting his tournaments, does not stream his tournaments. Browday, I think, is the only person I know of, and I think Spessy does, but he doesn't do as well when he does. But like, most people don't. Like, so J Hugs had that thing for a little while where he was doing interviews with people while they were playing like drafted battle mode, and it was super cool. But like, I did the first episode, and like, I don't know what I was answering any question, right? Like, I answered, but I was just talking. Like, my brain was not there. It's real hard to play competitive anything while you're like having a conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because we're all talking about how daunting it's going to be. Meanwhile, I guarantee you, Snapster's just going to have his chat draft the deck for infinite runs, and then just do that. That's what he's been doing pretty much all of his streams the last like few days, cool. And I can't wait to see that.
So, my big concern is wait time. Like, if as few people as we all seem to expect to have these infinite tickets, and there are no bots outside of that first game.
Oof. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Thanks for making it.
Maybe we'll just maybe they have to give you a bot
cheating
at
bots.
Some point, or maybe the game just like has a failsafe. Ooh, oh yeah, don't do that.
They have to be if they're infinite. The bots that know exactly RNG and everything.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh.
All right, let's move on. This was depressing.
Yeah.
I'm sad now.
Right. Next up, we have a bunch of different decks that we'd like you to know for Conquest. We're not going to spend more than a minute or so on each, but these are just the decks that listeners need to know exist for Conquest. What's good about them? How are their major matchups? Is there any card that you're like, why the hell is this in this sample version Glazer put together? Cool. And we're not going to read these.
Sure.
Please, listeners, if you're getting this in the audio format, so we're not reading you 15 lists. That's boring for everyone. It's boring for us. It's boring for you. Do us a favor. The show notes will have this exact slideshow. If you've been playing, you know the decks, and if you haven't been playing, know the decks. Check the show notes. They're right there in your podcatcher. All right. This is the monster. Apparently, Molt's baby now. This is Lockjaw Evolutionary. What do we think of this deck? Why is it so good? Let's go for it.
I mean, I already said it, so I'll just say it again real quick. The deck is surprisingly very good at attacking all three lanes. You have quite a bit of power to output. I don't agree. So this list, I don't typically play Infinite. And I wave as one of those tech slots. You can do wave or Killmonger, Iceman, that kind of thing. I think KM Best even covered this idea as well. But the deck is very good at spreading out its power. And ensuring that you can get that easy win off of the Lockjaw lane, but also being able to go into just getting a Thor down in another lane along with a Jane Foster, and then repeatedly grabbing Wasp, which oftentimes I usually get Wasp activations at least twice per game, sometimes 3 or 4 times even, just from drawing it back or putting it into Lockjaw. Allows you to just basically add on negative 3, 4, 6 power onto another opponent's lane, which adds into your own power, even if it's not something that's going to be like a massive drop. This deck is insane and really, really, really good, surprisingly. And I am worried about the overall health of Conquest if this is the type of deck that you want to be playing to be rewarded and getting further. And that's why I'm worried about balancing in general, because like I don't think this is a menace in the ladder. You're gonna see it in the ladder, but it's a different monster in this mode. So I don't know what
So
you do
in
about
ladder, just for the record, it's got the that low 60% win rate that the Shuri deck had, that the Thanos deck had, that the Darkhawk stature deck had. Like that low 60% win rate is traditionally around what has made them nerf cards. This actually has a higher cube rate than any of those, even on ladder. The other thing, the reason Infinite's here is because by the time anyone listens to this, Spider Ham will be out, and you should put this deck in the Infinite in this deck. The second Spider Ham is in people's
Fair.
decks.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, I've gone up against this. I do think it is probably like the top deck. I do sit around like trying to understand why it's so RNG based, but it draws a lot of power, and like, yeah, usually there'll be like a Lockjaw lane, then you have Thor going up to 10, you know what I mean? And then Jane Foster's 8 power. And I've mainly been running like variations of bounce, and a lot of opponents like if I'm going up against them, I got to win a lot of cubes early before they realize I have Shang-Chi in my deck, right? Like that is my surprise card. A lot of people don't expect Shang-Chi in bounce decks right now, even though it's becoming more popular. But I don't know, the deck's just so like, I hate playing Lockjaw because it's adding randomness to the game, which is something I just absolutely hate doing. But you know, I might start playing it for Infinity Conquest, just because for some reason it is so powerful. I often try to think of like what's going to be the counter to this, because it really feels like you have to be running Zabu with Shang-Chi and Absorbing Man just so you can Shang-Chi 2 different lanes, right? I know Glazer, we were talking about like the list with like Iron Man, the bounce deck, and I don't know if that's what helps you get over the top of some of these, but yeah, it's a difficult one to play up against. I've beat it plenty of times, but it is just a big pain. Like if you don't get the right draws, like if you don't have Kitty first turn, like you're just screwed.
I think I have the answer, but we'll get there later. Molt?
I agree. So
Well, hurry before I gotta go.
I've been playing a variation of this one. Mine has Thing in it and Doctor Doom. I don't have Dracula, Jubilee, or Chavez or Infinite. I also have Sunspot in it, because I think that the fact that this sort of deck allows you to float so much, it not only keeps your opponent off guard, but it also doesn't punish you, really. Like with the fact that when you're floating, you're giving power to Hulk. You're also allowing yourself time to hopefully draw Lockjaw and play Wasp on top of it, etc. For once, like this is such a good deck that you don't have to play on curve, which is just kind of a strange experience that you can literally pass to turn 4 lots of times and still completely beat your opponent, especially with having Magneto in here and the potential that has. It's I don't know. It is an RNG based deck, but because of the floatability of it, it pretty much gets rid of the negative RNG aspects. You can win with this deck, and even if you don't draw into Lockjaw.
I mean, even the RNG aspect is easily negated by disciplined snapping. This is the most efficient snapping deck I've played with, because if you don't have that, like typically you want to have either Lockjaw on 3 with like a Wasp or something like that, or even having Lockjaw go into something like Jubilee, even though I know Molt said you don't play it, but that kind of idea, you want to have that set up, or Thor to be able to go into your other things as well, and even go into like Lockjaw a bit later. If you don't have that setup and you're just kind of drawing a bunch of your big cards, You just retreat for a cube, come back again, and then you can high roll your stuff later. It's very efficient at retreating for low like risk, but getting really high reward. Just based on the idea of the deck, which again is part of my worry for this mode rewarding that type of gameplay.
I'll teach you how to beat it in like 5 minutes. We're gonna make Boot stay late. Rook?
All right, we're gonna move on to the next deck though, which is Evo Lane Control. So, folks, give me one thought about this deck.
I'll go. I've been playing the Electra version of Bounce. That he goes by W now, but many of you know him by W Los. But yeah, it has Electra in it, and just tagging a Sunspot or Nebula and bouncing them back, tagging the other one, like it really screws up his deck, and it's hilarious. So yeah, I think the Lockjaw version is stronger than this one if you have some answers in your deck.
Red.
It's probably my favorite deck in the game. I prefer, for my own enjoyment, I like the one that doesn't run high evo, but I acknowledge that this one is better. And I think the Thing is the most slept on and one of the more powerful cards in this list. And yeah, it's incredibly powerful.
Molt, one thought about the high evo control list.
It goes back to what I said about the other one. Being able to float and lock down and control is what makes this very strong. Storm into Cyclops is ridiculous. And then if you already have Nebula or Sunspot down on another location and you play Professor X turn 4 after you played Cyclops on the other location, like, I don't know. It's ridiculously strong in the fact that you don't have to do anything once you have those down in order to win.
Glazer, one thought.
Have an answer for the storm location, and it's not so bad. If they get that storm location and you can't take it back, you're dead. You're dead in the water. And a lot of things have really weak turn 3s and 4s. And if you have a weak turn 3 and 4 and they drop a storm into a Cyclops, you have lost that game.
Dracula is the best card for the storm lane.
Two different answers.
That too.
There. Well, how about Patriot? So, Molt, what is one thought about Patriot?
Honestly, I don't play Patriot decks. So my one thought about it is it's extremely predictable. So I don't know. I honestly don't know what my thought would be. It's predictable. So know what's coming, know the power of everything, do the math, and if you have the answers, beat it or retreat. It's extremely predictable most of the time where they're going to play Ultron, where they're going to play the other things. Take your time, do the math. If you're going to lose, don't hope that they don't play Ultron or whatever. Just leave for one and then come back.
Brad?
God, this deck is so boring. Like it's just so uninteresting to me. And I tried playing like the Iron Lad version and stuff. I tried playing this one with Dazzler. I've tried doing like even a Surfer variant that has like even Cyclops and stuff in it as well. And nothing that I do is fun. And like Molt said, it's very predictable. It's a glass cannon deck. It is the most glass cannony deck that there is in the game. It either beats you by a lot or doesn't go off and loses by a lot.
Glazer, one thought.
So when I play this, I win by like a point in 2 lanes. I don't usually win by a lot. I actually do play this deck an awful lot, even in Conquest mode. I've been farming silver with this a reasonable amount. I think it's really strong, but it definitely like wins by like 2 points very often. I also think that the idea that this deck is easy to play is a misnomer or misconception, whatever. When only top players are playing it, this has the best win rate in the game. And when other people play it, it doesn't. I think this is really hard to play. And I know for a fact that as someone who plays this a lot, I play it wrong a lot. You need to be real perfect about your early plays before you know anything else to make sure that you get those 1 and 2 point wins. Having a Misty in the wrong lane and having an Ultron drone in that lane instead, or having a Wasp in that lane instead, will lose you games. and like it's really complicated to figure out. Also, again, please, please, please stop playing your lockjaws and big cards behind my invisible woman. It's still a Shang-Chi.
All right, Boot. What's your one thought about this deck?
No, Brad said exactly what I was thinking. Like I know I know that the Patriot decks will have high win rates, but I just find them just so boring. Just so boring. Like I don't care if this thing had like a 98% win rate. It just bores me to tears. Like I know Molt, like that's why he loves like move decks and stuff like that. There's just so much to do. I like that. That's why I like bounce decks. When I used to play Magentris, I even enjoyed like the stature list just because there's stuff to do. With this, it's like that just very sequential. And I know like what Glazer was talking about, like high level players, like it's a little bit more intricate and stuff like that. But like for me, I'm just like, nah, man, I'll play anything else. And but I think it's decent right now too, because a lot of people stop playing Enchantress. But you just wait. She'll be back. She'll be back.
All right. Well, Boot, I believe at this point in the episode, we need to say goodbye to you, my friend.
Wait, Glazer was going to give me an answer to something.
Let's just go to that one. So the answer is the Sarah deck. No one's playing the version that I'm playing. I workshopped it with this guy named Turbo on our Discord. Hey, Turbo. Turbo's on our Discord. He's like a high-level poker player. He's played with a bunch of the World Series of Poker people. Like, he's really, really good. So what we decided to do in a conversation one night is we put Magic into our Sarah deck. And Magic worked. Yeah,
like
but it's running both. So like the ideal world is that you go Magic on 5 into Sarah on 6, and then like you've got so much information on the last turn of the game. You've got things like a Big Kitty and Hit Monkey that can go wherever you want, because unless they're playing Sandman, they blew their wave on 5, right? They blew their wave on 5, and like they can't just not wave on 5 in case you Sarah on 5. So like you've got that huge advantage in that matchup, and then like the big Infinite decks, they've got all their crap out by then. You know exactly where to Shang, you know exactly where they're weakest, and like you win the lane you Shang because you just wiped 40 power out there, right? Like ideally, my version runs Invisible Woman over Zabu and Rogue over Enchantress, and like that Nova spot will in about 20 minutes become Spider Ham. But like the idea is that last spot, like you Shang one spot and then the other spot is where you're dropping like it's a Bishop or Angela lane that you're also dropping Kitty and Hit Monkey in. And it's just like, well, I killed one of your big spots. You didn't have enough to go tall in 2 of those big spots to that level, right? Like your Thor is big, but like it's not much bigger than Hit Monkey and Kitty, and you just go over the top in 2 lanes. And like because you magicked, it always feels really bad in Sarah decks because I feel like I'm missing one key piece like all the time, but you have an extra draw step because of that magic, and that extra draw step is so huge in making sure you get exactly what you want.
Interesting. I might give it a try. Maybe me and Brad will hop into battle mode. I'll see if it goes up against it. But yeah, I'll give it a try and I'll report back. But yeah, I gotta get going, fellas. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Real quick before you go, tell our loyal listeners where they can find you.
At Bootman MSTZ on YouTube and Twitter. And Brad and we got a pretty cool podcast that I'm sure he'll plug again later. Snap on Ego.
All right. Now that Bootman booted himself off the show, we can jump right back into it with Tech Bounce. So, Molt, we'll start with you. This Tech Bounce deck. One thought.
Kitty Pryde is the best card in the game.
I love it.
That might be a stretch. I love Kitty Pryde. And yeah, this one thought. This deck has lots of ways to put power on the board that can change every single turn.
All right. Glazer?
The more you think of this as a bounce deck, the worse you will be at playing it. The bounce is nice. It's an extra benefit for moving power around for surprising opponents and stealing an extra cube. But your job is to figure out how to get Kitty, Angela, and Bishop, and eventually Hit Monkey as big as you can. I also think this deck really wants Iron Man. The version I shared is the I guess he goes by W now? Okay. The artist formerly known as Wobolos's version, because I like it a lot. I think it's a really cool version because Elektra's in it. But I think Iron Man belongs in this deck. At the end of the day, I think Iron Man is too good with Bast to not run in this deck. Anytime you can put Iron Man and Bast in a deck and it makes sense, you probably should, just because that's such a powerful combo. Kitty is intensely good, but she is the bounce card. The rest of the cards are just facilitating power in other ways.
All right, Brad.
To back up Molt's claim as Kitty being the best card in the game, I will say Kitty on 1 is the best card in the game, and I don't think it's particularly close. But yeah, I think this version is very interesting. I like the idea of having all these tech answers. Bootman touched on it earlier with, you see the Electra here, being able to bounce up Electra a couple of times and hit the Nebulas, Sunspots, or even sometimes you might have the mirror match and catch the Kitty Pride if you're able to call your shot in the correct lane, based on priority, of course. So yeah, I like this version a lot. I'm not a huge bounce player because, again, it's just not my style. But hey, if this gets you through conquest mode, which I think it definitely can, you probably should play it if you like the version.
All right. Well, Brad, you are going to kick us off with the Good Cards Wave deck. What is your one thought about the Good Cards Wave deck?
This deck will not die. We thought it was gonna die when Wave was initially changed to start, but yeah, you see a lot of cool cards here. I like the Darkhawk package with Rock Slide and stuff like that, and Korg. Goose is able to help control a lane in a way, especially when you have Zabu down. It inhibits your opponent from playing in that lane while you're able to actually sneak a Darkhawk behind that. That's very powerful, and of course, nice top end with Leader, Doom, to kind of go off of your Wave on 5 while also countering what is probably one of the better decks in the game, being different variations of bounce decks. And Iron Lad can just get you these cards earlier, or even just twice. So yeah, I love this deck. It's awesome. And of course, it's running Jeff, the actual best card in the game.
Molt?
Goose is a slept on card. I definitely agree with what Brad said there, especially in Zabu decks. But Goose is incredible. It allows this deck to control a lane with Goose and then play power in another lane, whether that's with Leader or America Chavez, like whatever it may be. I think that Goose is people need to start putting Goose in their decks, honestly. I don't think we see it enough, and I think that it's actually super, super strong, unless you're facing bounce, of course.
Yeah.
Glazer, one thought?
I am so bored of Wave, I can cry. I don't know why. Like, I usually, I just, other people, I hate Patriot, it's boring, I won't play it. This. I don't know why.
All right.
That's fair.
Well,
I second it.
We're gonna.
This one we have to take a while on. Sorry.
We're gonna talk Molt. Give us
Let's do
you. No one else gets more than one thought, but Molt, you get more than one thought. Everybody else gets one, but you get to sort of. You can give a whole dissertation for our loyal listeners about this wave move deck, or if you have a preferred spicier version that you want to chat a little bit.
I'm sure people know by now my Gamuva deck, which has Gamora, Kitty Pryde, and Angela in it. It's incredible at getting power down. I've tried Iron Lad and move decks, and I don't know that it is always as effective as some other cards can be. For me in move, I think Angela is the most slept on card. People always ask why you have Angela in there, and I say because I can get it to 8 to 12 each game very easily. But with this, especially with the addition of Ghost Spider is an incredible card on any turn. Like, it can do so much stuff, obviously probably starting on turn 3 or 4, but final turn you can do things with it, whether you've played stuff on previous rounds. Like, I could talk for friggin' hours on this. The way that I would tell people to approach this deck is look at the energy cost and see the things that you can do on each turn. See what you can do on turn 4, see what you can do on turn 5, see what you can do on turn 6. Add all the energy up, and you will blow your mind at the massive power combos that you can do. Just the fact that you could go Iron Fist, Dagger, Ghost Spider, final turn is like nutty, because you can just you can do that on turn 5. Iron Fist, Ghost Spider, Dagger, turn 5 could get your Dagger up to friggin' 15 without question. Like, we're not 15, obviously. It has to be an even number. But that's my encouragement for people who want to play move. Look at the energy cost, put it on the turn, and see the things that you can do with it, because it opens move up
It was
so
15
much.
because the hub gave you Bast, which you played with dagger in hand. It's good. You're right. You got it.
Right.
Perfect.
Glazer, your one thought about
So
this deck.
the second we get off, I'm putting Angela in it. I'm like something stupid. Like, I've lost 2 times and I've won in the high teens to 20s with this exact deck. I don't know why this deck is completely bonkers. I wanted Angela in it real bad, and KM talked me out of it. And like, Cam's not the move master, Molt is. So Angela's going in the deck, baby. That's what I'm doing the second I get off, because Iron Lad is only really good when he copies Jeff to me, and most other things he's sort of like a little bit awkward curve wise, and God forbid you get a Heimdall when you're not ready. I don't love Craven. I know that's a sin, but I don't.
All right.
He's not one of the top
I
tier
want
move,
to cut him,
move
and there's
cards.
nothing else.
Brad, one thought.
I agree about the Iron Lad take that Glazer has, and I guess Molt as well. It's a little awkward, and yeah, that looking at that Heimdall, I just know I'm gonna be unlucky and hit that every time I play Iron Lad, so that turns me off of the card in the deck in general. But yeah, I'm just excited to see how Move continues to evolve once we get Miguel 2099, because that's something I'm very interested in to see if it's going to be good in the deck. And I'm actually really interested to hear Molt's thoughts on 2099 more so than this deck in general. If you love Move and love the intricate different lines you can do with this deck, especially with the introduction of Ghost Spider, by all means, play the deck. You're going to suck at it first. I guarantee you. It is an incredibly difficult deck to pilot. But if you keep the reps in and you like this style, you will be rewarded from your efforts and time invested into it.
Awesome.
Wait.
All
I'm
right.
sorry. Wait, we need
Destroy
Molt to answer.
101.
Molt, how do you
On
build this with
2099?
2099? You cut Iron Lad. How do you fit Angela and 2099?
So personally, I don't play wave and move decks because it's what other people are doing. Like, that's the only reason. It's really good. It makes sense. Wave cloak is a great turn 5, but other people are doing it, so I don't want to do it. That's just how my mind works. But I mean, yeah, I think 2099 is going to fit great in this deck. It'll fit great in my stop and move deck, which has Shang-Chi. And 2099 is going to fit in an insane amount of decks that aren't even specific to move. You could play, like, Cloak, in my opinion, is better than Lizard, just because there's no downside on final turn. If you're playing a Sarah deck, you can play Cloak and you're good to go. And so I think you could easily fit Cloak and 2099 in lots of different decks, and just, I mean, catch your opponents off guard. But with this, I mean, Iron Fist, Ghost Spider, like, so many different opportunities to move 2099. I think it's going to be probably the second best card. I think Ghost Spider is the best card of the season, then 2099. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of play from it.
Oink oink, baby.
All right. So, Destroy 101. Brad, one thought about Destroy 101.
Deadpool is maybe the most fun card in the game. Like, when it goes off, like, the thing I'm sad about the most when it comes to the beast change is that you can't really play in the Deadpool deck anymore. I loved on 2 going Deadpool 1, beast on 2, and then just having a 0 cost Deadpool for the rest of the game. It was so fun. But I'm just happy to see Null in a deck that's not a Galactus deck, because I think Null is a bit underrated outside of those decks, because you can do some nutty things with this deck in particular, and it's very, very powerful and nice. And of course, look at Sabretooth's in the deck. You got Deadpool. This is just, oh my god, this makes me feel like I'm playing Snap for the first week again, because I'm pretty sure that's what everyone was doing, is just you gravitate to these cards because they're all in pool 2 for the most part. So yeah, this deck is so much fun. I don't think it's the best deck in the world. It has some consistency issues, surprisingly, with how much what's it called, just doesn't matter. Forget the word. Doesn't matter.
Synergy.
It's just not. Thank you, synergy. It's not as consistent as you want it to be, and its curve can be awkward. But god damn it, it's such a fun deck.
Molt?
I think the Venom buff was the best thing that's happened to Destroy in a very long time. Even though it's only 2, you don't feel as bad using it as you used to. Like, using Venom on Bucky before was friggin' terrible. But now it's like, not bad. You could replace Deadpool with Silver Surfer if you wanted to be cheeky, especially once you get Sabretooth down to 0.
All right, Glazer.
The best thing that happened was the Venom buff, but the best thing that will happen is X-23 releasing. X-23 is a 1/2 that when it's destroyed, regenerates somewhere else and gives you +1 energy. The consistency issue I have is just you're always slightly off curve and you don't benefit from it like a high evolutionary deck. So X-23 will fix that problem toot sweet. When you see X-23 and all of a sudden, like, you just have excess energy with this deck. When you have excess energy with this deck, you're doing completely absurd things. This deck is amazing in Conquest mode because when it is awkward, you retreat, right? Like, you have no problem. And then when it goes off, you're just like, your opponents are like, I could stop this. And you're like, well, I just dropped a 40 power null, a free death, and a 12 power Deadpool on turn 5. And like, bye.
All right. Next deck is Sandman Ramp. Definitely was one of the ones that Cam Best has been pushing. And Glazer, what is your one thought about this deck?
I wish they would just delete Sandman. Wave already exists, and Wave is a more balanced card. This deck is always going to be really good, and it is, I think, the only way to actually stop the Kitty and Sarah decks right now, at least unless Ham does part of that job for it.
Brad?
Completely disagree with that take about Sandman. Sandman is a very integral part to the game because you need to have that balance. I think Wave is the one that's a little bit awkward because Sandman needs to have a lot more build around potential, where Wave is a bit easier to slot into random decks. I mean, we're seeing Wave in move decks. Molt said it himself, even though he doesn't want to play it, that Wave and Cloak on 5 is a very good play. And that just feels wrong in my brain. You're not going to put Sandman in that deck. So I think Sandman's very good for the game. And this deck is maybe not the most fun deck for most people, both playing and playing against, but it's a good one. You have to respect it.
Molt?
This deck has an incredible amount of control, even though you don't see Sandman or Professor X or anything like that. Like Wave on 3 into Sandman on 4 is limiting to your opponent, but allows you to gain access to other locations when they can't, through the form of Arnim Zola, Leader, and Dr. Doom and Odin. Yeah, it's incredible control that also allows you to spread power.
I hates it.
All right. So this last slide of decks, there are way too many on here. So what we could just talk in general real quick about the decks that are on here and offer a few thoughts.
What's that bottom left one?
My
It's so
baby
cool.
right
That
now.
deck is so cool.
Gamuva, it's fun, man. And I mean, it gains its power from Kitty, Angela, and Gamora, which is crazy. Like Kitty, Gamora final turn is ridiculous. You can Gamora turn 5 and Ghost Spider, Kitty, Iron Fist, 2, 3, 4, Dagger. Like, what the freak are you talking about? Like, literally, you could play Gamora turn 5 and then Ghost Spider, Iron Fist, Dagger, Kitty, Pride. So it is an incredible move deck that doesn't limit you to just having to play move cards, but also allows you to gain power from other things. So it's kind of a good introduction into the way that move works. But you also have things like Storm Juggernaut, which everybody's been playing since Pool 2 or whatever. And then you have lots of other things, and it just gives you access to like an introduction to the way that move
You know what I
works.
love about the deck? If you buy the season pass, this is all Pool 3 cards.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a cool one. I like how we have 2 representations of Hazmat Luke Cage decks here, which was where my mind went initially when we first saw High Evolutionary Spoiled. I know we don't. I know that one of them is not a High Evolutionary deck. It is the Sentry Valkyrie version. But man, I hate playing against the junk deck, or just like the debris, the Viper and stuff. It's just not one I enjoy, because I've been playing a lot of Doc Ock in this Darkhawk deck I've been playing, because I like Ghost Spider as well, and being able to pull down their entire hand onto a lane and then just be, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go spider the Doc Hawk away on turn 6 with a Dark Hawk to back him up as well, is really cool. But not when you're playing against this deck. And every single time I pull down Valkyrie without fail, it's always Valkyrie that gets pulled down. Not even 3-power Doc Hawk. So yeah, but these are all cool decks. And look, if the whole thing about any of these decks, in any deck period in this game, no matter what, pilot ability and experience with a deck will always trump overall deck, like in terms of power level. I think that's very true in any game whatsoever. I think Molt is a very good example of that. With you've been basically the ambassador for move decks for the entirety that you've been on this game, which I think is incredible. And outside of this season, Move has been one of the ones that people laugh at the most as being like one of the consistently worst decks and stuff. And you've been able to hit infinite with it consistently, and then off the meta decks in general. So no matter what, how you feel about any of these decks or any deck in general, if you like it and you can play well with it, just play it. Don't give in to these tier lists and stuff like that. Do what makes you happy, and just, it's going to feel better when you beat the high Evo deck with the off the meta deck. So do what you want.
Do what you want on ladder. Be a little more careful in Conquest.
Yeah,
Fair.
unfortunately.
All right. So we have one more thing we want to discuss with you two, which is what the community has been discussing. So there's sort of been two big picture themes that have come out in sort of the last week or so, which is the first one we're going to conquer is Second Dinner's greed, or supposed greed, which has a huge list of sort of 15 theses that people have been complaining about. Dark Hawk and Null, and no communication about them staying at Series 4. Season Pass cards of Zabu and Hitmonkey not moving down fast enough. Snow Guard moving to 4 and not all the way to 3. Dark Hawk and the, of course, X3 bundle meme. These sort of Series 3 mystery shop sort of not paying out and not being valuable enough. All right, Token Tuesdays getting nerfed, which we talked about with Yeti last week. The general bundle value going down. The concept of big bads. And then, of course, nerfing cards as they go down in series. So sort of this is Second Dinner too greedy for its own good at this moment in Marvel Snap.
I mean, they're a corporation, unfortunately, when it comes down to it. And regardless of your political beliefs and what you back, what you believe in, we do live in a capitalistic, society and economy in this country where Second Dinner is based. So they're going to unfortunately do what they want in terms of what generates the most monetary value. We talked about that a little bit in regards to card acquisition versus cosmetics and what they charge for those. Yes, I understand the Dark Hawk bundle is a huge flop on their end in combination with the lack of communication about him and Null, and then the whole series drops and stuff like that. They just got to get better with it. And they keep telling us that there's a change to card acquisition coming. And hopefully that is for the better, and we'll get some more cards in people's hands. But for now, I understand the frustration of the community. It's completely warranted. It's just, I think it's tough to be a content creator right now without giving into the overall negativity. It's a really hard thing to balance. And especially when I think looking at the creator program, we have 70 creators, I think, in that. And I'm sure that more than half of them have made some type of content on this negative aspect, which can't be great for the mental health of the entire community in general. So it's a balancing act. The one thing I do want to touch on real quick, though, towards the bottom of this list where you see big bads, get rid of them. Or do one of two things. My thing is either have no big bads at all and have much better acquisition in general, which that should be the thing. But if you're going to have big bads, no other card should be in Series 5. It should be reserved for big bads only. Every card that comes out should start in Series 4 forever. And then maybe sometimes you sprinkle one into Series 3. And that's going to be way more palatable for people to spend their tokens on and stuff like that. And because right now, the right thing to do is spending 6,000 tokens on a big bad and not something like Silk right? So get rid of anything that goes into Series 5 other than big bads. And I think that would already be a nice step in the
I
right
love that
direction
idea.
towards better card acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Molt.
I'll go for it. Man, communication is key. Like if and they've struggled at it or put it in places where people can't find it, which is really difficult because not everybody has Discord, not everybody has Twitter, not everybody has all these things, and so they have to figure out a way to communicate to everybody that plays the game in a more effective and efficient way. For those of you who were playing the game when Nexus events came out, I was incredibly proud of the way that they handled that and apologized for a mistake and gave back to the community. Oftentimes, you do not see developers take a little, remove the pride a little bit and admit to mistakes. A lot of times, they just kind of brush it under and just move on. And I wish that they would handle a lot of these things with that same desire to admit like fault and error and understand things, and then give back, but also explain why things are happening like they are. I think that that'll make it a little bit more palatable to people as they are frustrated with card acquisition and all that kind of stuff, because there are changes coming, but people hate the word soon. Like what the heck is soon?
It's become
and so
a
you
meme.
have to be able you have to be able to communicate in a manner, especially nowadays in TikTok and YouTube short world where people can only pay attention for 4.5 seconds. Like, you're going to lose a large amount of your player base over weeks and weeks of this kind of stuff if you don't pay attention to it. And it's frustrating. I think communication is incredibly important. Snow Guard to 4, no, put it to 3. That's hilarious. I agree with the big bads thing. I think that either big bads should be above 5 in a sense of their own, or like you said, you remove 5 and it's only big bads. So it would be series 1 to 4 and then big bads. I think that that's a great idea, and I think that's a great way to organize it and make all the other things feel a little bit I don't know, more achievable. And then nerfing as cards go down in series. All of this is so frustrating because the only reason that people get mad about something going down or getting nerfed when it goes down in series is because they saved up for it for 3 weeks and then they bought it and then it needed to be nerfed. Like, cards need to be nerfed. We're not just going to leave them in their overpowered state or in their frustrating state. They need to be nerfed. It's the length at which it takes that is frustrating to people because they save up and then they buy it and then they feel like they missed out on abusing something. And then it gets changed. Kind of like, I mean, if you think about the whole GameStop thing, when everybody was stoked when they got in GameStop at the beginning, and then when they got in at the end, it was like, oh wait, what? I just lost all my money. And it was like, well, yeah, because like that shouldn't have happened in the first place. And so you see that type of stuff with cards like this as well. It needs to be fixed sooner rather than later. Otherwise, you're going to upset the people who don't have it. And then when they get it, they're going to be upset because it's going to get nerfed. So there just needs to be kind of a quicker turnaround. I don't think there's anything wrong with nerfing them as they go down in series. It just can't last as long as it does at its peak, if you will.
I mean, them getting the cards would, earlier, better card acquisition would go a long way in that, right? I look at Shadow King as an example when he was originally in Series 5, because we had the Zabu and Surfer nerf, right? And I'm not saying that Surfer shouldn't have been nerfed, but what I am saying is maybe, just maybe, if Shadow King was an available card in Series 3, for example, and was much more accessible to the masses, and people experimented with teching this kind of card that seemingly could have a fairly interesting counter to Surfer, it's possible that Surfer would not have hit the threshold of needing a nerf that we saw, right? Not saying that it maybe probably still would have been nerfed regardless because it was a bit too pushed, but maybe, just maybe, it would not have needed that. And the only other thing I want to touch on from Molt about communication, talk about not everyone has Twitter, not everyone has Discord. Even their website, the thing that people should go to get their news and stuff like that, I've noticed if there's an OTA or a patch, and they've gotten a little bit better about this, but oftentimes I don't see it show up in the newsfeed on their own website until like 4 days after the patch dropped. Like, why are we waiting so long?
How is Glenn their PR team? He's like a programmer, right? Like, They
Yeah, I
don't
used
they
to have
need to
developers.
hire a PR person to communicate with us?
It's technically Molly, I think, right?
Well, they have a
Sure.
community manager too,
Sure, but like,
Infinite
but
Veritas.
Yeah,
but like,
that's
we
true.
don't hear a lot from these people, right? Like, or at least like they're not all over the place. They're not front
Right.
facing to the community in the same way. Like,
Mhm.
having that one voice that sort of is their voice of God would be so useful. And I appreciate like crazy what Glenn and what Tian and what all these other people do, but I don't think it's helpful. And I'm gonna give an analogy for why. Um, the messaging, let's save the analogy. The messaging gets too different from too many different people, right? Like, different people have different takes, different people say different things. There's like 17 people who really get frustrated by Glenn for whatever reason, right? There's like a bunch of people who are like, why won't you just tell us this? Why won't you just tell us that? And then they have all these different people to yell at, and it sort of just like becomes this low murmur of discontent. And that low murmur of discontent is a problem. And like, one voice that's like, we will announce exactly X at exactly Y date to the best of our ability. If we're not going to be able to, we will not, needs to happen. I think like the big problem that's coming down the pike is that they're trying to build the plane while they're flying it, right? And like, card acquisition is being built as they're flying it, which is a problem because anyone who started like a bit after global launch is now going to be in pool 3 for freaking ever with no way to access decks. So like, for all these other problems which are frustrating, could you imagine entering pool 3 right now with 94 cards and you can only choose one a month to get? That's a
Yeah.
miserable experience. And like, all I think basically all of these other problems are symptomatic of that problem, right? Like, if you had a smoother card acquisition pattern, like once you're done with pool 3, card acquisition is actually not that bad, right? Like, it's not great, but like, if you spend a couple bucks, you can get a decent number of cards. And if they're going to release a couple things into pool 3, right? Like, it's not crazy to think that you get a pool 5 and a pool 3 a month, or like 3 pool 3s, 4 pool 3s a month, for very low cost, for like a reasonable amount of money, right? How do we get people there so that they're not driving themselves completely insane? How do we help people get to that point without like hating second dinner for like seemingly torturing them? Because like, imagine you get to pool 5, right? And like, you don't know what's what. You're like, sorry, not pool 5. You get to series 3, and like, you don't know what's what, and you blow an early. The first one I bought in my token shop when I got to series 3, because like, token shops just happened, was like Thor. And I bought Thor with my free one now because there's not tokens anymore, right? There's no series 2 and Thor deck that's any good. And now I'm playing against other people who've like knew what they were doing and got Sarah. Or like, let's say I really want Sarah, and I've been looking forward to Sarah for years. So I did my research, right? Or months. So I did my research. And now I'm waiting 4 weeks, 5 weeks for Sarah to show up in that damn spot.
Yeah.
Something's got to give.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think to sort of bring us all together, I think people, if they want to be able to criticize second dinner, I think in a productive way, start thinking more about causes of problems rather than consequences. And I think this last one that we have here of like nerfing cards as you go down in series is the biggest example of putting consequences before causes. Like, the reason why cards get nerfed as they go down is because of the bad card acquisition model, not because of some conspiracy that they just want to screw people over. It's just that hot cards get released in a really inaccessible way, and then they're going to get nerfed, and as they get more accessible because they're hot cards, and frequently so far they've been live balancing cards rather than necessarily releasing many cards in a fully balanced form. And Molt's earlier point about they got a nerf when they got a nerf to keep the game healthy and just hold out until every broken card is series 3 is going to lead to a toxic game that people aren't going to want to play. And sort of thinking about things like card acquisition and their monetary as like primary causes and what flows from that. And what second dinner needs to fix is sort of those causes rather than the consequences. And that, I think, would cause a sort of healthier discourse in the community rather than trying to play sort of discursive whack-a-mole with whatever slightly annoying thing gets people riled up, and think sort of like bigger picture and like really hammer second dinner on these sort of much bigger picture things that lead to these smaller everyday annoyances. but we should definitely move on to the second set of controversies, which is technical issues. There have been a lot of technical issues, from High Evolutionary's release being a hot mess, server issues with Conquest. Like, literally, I was watching Aspiring Spike, who is my favorite Twitch streamer. He was streaming Snap, and literally it crashed in the middle of him playing, and Second Dinner paid him to do it, and they lost money. Spike lost money of being able to get the Snap and his Magic audience. I lost enjoyment of being able to watch Spike play that. Continuous Conquest related issues that haven't stopped. The weekend missions never showed up on my phone all weekend. Season starting rank issues of people getting 2-second infinites. The Miles bundle compensation issue. The bots are back. And then, of course, season pass free variant bug, which I think has hit every month since the bug has shown up. And then, of course, the season pass conquest confusion stuff. So these technical issues, what do we think? What is there to blame? What could be the causes of these things besides just these specific consequences?
I have a new one that's happening. I bought Silk last week, and Silk is still showing up in my shop as unbought. And if I don't get my 1,000 free tokens, I'm gonna rage.
So it's doing that for me as well. But they did say that they're going to run a
Okay.
filter that just checks
Okay, good.
collections once pretty much tomorrow, right? Like the second Spider Ham drops and he's the one in the shop and Silk's been replaced. They said they're running a mass filter to check everyone's collections, and then whoever has Silk at that exact moment is when that's when they'll get the 1,000
Since
tokens
they
or
managed
whatever.
to break that somehow too.
Yeah.
So can I go first here?
There's a lot.
So I think
Yeah.
my big problem isn't that they have bugs, because I don't actually really give a shit. Bugs are going to happen. It's that it keeps being the things people are most excited about, which leads to an extreme sense of disappointment. And there's almost no worse feeling for a company to perpetuate than disappointment in their community. Like, oh my god, High Evolutionary, everyone's streaming, let's go. No. Like Conquest, yeah, new mode, first new mode, no. Weekend missions, I was really hyped, unnecessarily hyped to do weekend missions, no. Kitty Pride, it was the last really hot new card before Evolutionary, no. The ones that are smaller, I don't like. The Miles bundle compensation is whatever, it's annoying, right? But not disappointed, right? It's when they ferment a sense of disappointment that I think we're running into trouble. And they have to, when we're excited, capitalize on that excitement. That's what makes us keep going.
If you just go back and look through the Discord announcements from Molly and some other people regarding hey, we understand, we're aware of this problem or whatever, there's so many of those last month or so in regards to just technical issues. And it's weird to me, this game very clearly makes a lot of money, and I know it's far more intricate than this, and then just simply saying hire more people. But to a certain point, hire more people. I know it's a limited amount of people that you can get that could be qualified to do what you need to do. There's a specific engine that the game runs on. It's built in a very specific type of framework. You have to have people that you would have to potentially train on how this works on the back end, or find people that are experienced in something similar, or if not the exact same thing. I don't know if there's anything comparable to that in the field, but man, something's got to give at some point, right? It's every single time there's a new thing that happens, and it's become a little bit of a joke. And I'm happy that they're doing the right thing by compensating people regarding these issues.
Wait, they got Snow Guard right somehow.
Yeah,
the one complicated one.
But here's the thing: for every negative thing that happens with Second Dinner, there's plenty of good things that have happened as well, and positives in the game. Of they've built upon the game as it's been released, and made things better and better as we've gone along. They've done this kind of one step forward, two steps back kind of thing a little bit. I don't think it's maybe quite that bad. It might be a bit more even in terms of their progress. But here's the thing: no one's going to remember that. No one remembers the good things that happens because it's the negative ones that stick out so much like a sore thumb. And the more and more that they do this, the more and more you're going to have people just kind of drop the game in general. And then on top of that, we already talked about the card acquisition issue, but how hard is it for someone who stops playing this game for 2 months to get back into it? Like, how do you get those people back if you did the wrong things with like all these technical issues, the card acquisition, all these things piling up that might be someone's last straw, and you want to try and do the right thing and get them back into the game? And let's say they take the steps to do that, but the card acquisition is still how it is for the most part. How do you get them back? I don't think you can. Like, where's your motivation? Like, at that point, there's gonna be 100 cards in Series 3. I wouldn't be motivated to go through that.
How do we
You can
not
talk,
have
Glazer.
login rewards?
That's a great point.
Right? Like every game on Earth is just like log in every day and get X. Not do missions, just log in and get X. Like, and then just do catch-up rewards. If you haven't played in a month and you log back in, you'll be opening mystery cards. Like, you get a free card every day. Like,
yes. Like subscription services. We miss you. Come back. Here's a discounted price. Like that stuff.
Molt?
Yeah. I think I agree with the, like, errors are going to happen. Like, there are going to be bugs. And 99% of the people that complain about this stuff, myself included, have no idea what actually goes into coding these or anything like that. And so you have to approach it with that mindset. But at the same time, like, there are so many choices that people have in life of where they're going to spend their time. And if you continue to have errors like this that build up, even something as simple as the season starting rank, like, that one was annoying, but more so it was just like embarrassing. And it's almost like, oh, of course this happened. Like, people are getting to the point where they're like, all right, what's going to happen this time? Oh, okay, there it is. And it can be little or small, but it's the fact that something happened that carries the weight at this point, because things continue to happen with errors and stuff like this. And so, I mean, yeah, I think go down the lines of hiring more people, or even one thing that I've always wanted them to do. I don't know if this would help, but personally, I don't need a new card every week. Like, if they released the season pass card, or if they released 2 new cards a month and then released quote unquote new cards every other week, like they did with Wolverine and Sandman. You remember when those got their buff? Everyone was like, whoa, let's go. And Wolverine saw more play than it's ever freaking seen because of one little change. That counted as a new card to me, even though it was an old card. And then you're not worried about card acquisition, because if it's in the lower pools, people already have it, but it feels like a new card. And so I've always said, anytime a new season comes out, the people who want to spend money get the excitement of a new card. So Ghost Spider in this sense, but you also need to balance a card significantly to where it has that Wolverine or Sandman effect, to where people who don't spend money in the game feel like they're acquiring a new card that they've already had, which gives them that experience. So maybe that gives them more time to launch things if they only throw in 2 new cards into the game and then they balance something else. Because I don't know how often we see issues with things when they're balanced, more so when it's just new content that's being added. But that's always kind of been my perspective with new cards, is give us 2 actual new cards and then balance other cards to where they feel like new cards and people don't have to spend tokens to get said new cards.
They could also just release them at the same time. There's no reason to do it weekly, right? Just release 4, say buy them as you can. Start of the month ago.
Yeah.
Have any of you ever played or familiar with Rainbow Six Siege?
No.
I've watched people stream it. I've never played it, though.
So they do their seasons and they call them operations. And very early on in the game's release, and like within its first year, it was really buggy. They had a lot of technical issues. The game was still playable, but it had a lot of problems. So they canceled one of the upcoming seasons and then called it Operation Health, where they had no new content, no new nothing for about 3 months. And it was just them pausing all of that and putting all their time and effort in fixing the game and the infrastructure of the game. It might be to the point with Marvel Snap where they might need to do something like that. And I would be more than welcoming it. They can figure out how they want to compensate people if they feel like they should. I don't think they really would need to, but I'm sure people would complain about no new content, that kind of thing. So here, everyone have arbitrary number of tokens, have fun. Like when you first hit like 500 or whatever, when the token shop first came out. But putting stuff on hold for a little bit and maybe having to do like a super drop of like new cards and new content like they did in the beginning with they announced the series of 4 and 5 to kind of catch themselves up later on. I'd be cool with that. Just fix the game. Like if you have, and I know they said they don't want to tear down and like rebuild, but maybe it's at the point where like that's what would need to happen and they need to take a couple months to do that. I would rather them do that than have people slowly trickle away from the game because of these issues, because I'm sure that's already happening.
One other small thing they could do, and this isn't my idea, I think it might be Doug Pie's, I don't know where I heard it, I'm going to credit Doug Pie, I like Doug Pie, is just make the daily reset while you're in the office. So when shit goes wrong, as it inevitably does, you don't have to be like, well, we'll get to it in the morning. Right?
I have a theory about that. I feel like they're prioritizing, and this kind of goes back into the greed conversation. I feel like they're prioritizing peak hours, and my gut tells me that Eastern countries like China, Korea, Japan, Europe, stuff like that, is the majority of their player base, especially on the mobile side, and that's their peak hours for new content to drop, and they're prioritizing that more so than smoothness of the transition periods of like when these new contents come out. That's my gut. I don't have any proof to back this up beyond just like thinking about it, but that's what I feel like is happening.
All right. I think that was a wonderful little discussion full of some good hot takes. And I think it's time for us to bring this to a close slowly but steadily. Molt, please tell us and our loyal listeners where they can find you if they want to absorb your content.
Yep. You can find me on Twitter, Molt_YT, and then on YouTube, just look up Molt Marvel Snap. And that's where I put all of my content.
Awesome.
All right. So now it's time for my hard sell. So I don't know how to put this other than you watch Molt's content and you feel welcomed. It's always exceedingly kind and exceedingly open. I don't feel like everyone's content is like that, and I feel like it's like the single biggest key to like your massive success. If anyone's not subscribed to Molt, for the love of God, go subscribe to Molt, right? I literally only have people I really like on this cast. I pointedly, and I mean no disrespect to them, they're lovely people, don't watch large creators because I feel like I'm seeing a lot of the samey stuff, and I never feel that way with Molt, and I watch all of his stuff. It's really fun, really warm, really welcoming, and really different and creative. Make sure you sub.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Brad, why don't you tell our loyal listeners where they can find you?
Well, real quick, I do want to shout out Molt because I think you're a wonderful creator. And I think like a lot of the bigger creators that put a lot of time and effort into the game, people can look at you for inspiration if they're into content creation or just enjoying the game in general. I did have a friend ask for recommendations of people to like watch. And the way I described you was that cool dad that one of your friends has. Like that energy that you give is very like nice and it's enjoyable. It's warm, just like Glazer said. And it's not the samey stuff. So keep doing what you're doing. You are amazing. Otherwise, you can find me on YouTube. Same thing. Twitter, Bradcifer, Bradcifer. Easy peasy. That's about it.
My Bradcifer cell. So you got it here. His takes are so wildly different than everyone's. Like the way Bradcifer's brain works is not the way anyone else in this game works, and it is always so well reasoned and so interesting to watch, listen to, watch the YouTube, listen to, read on Twitter. Like you're not getting takes that anyone else has. Much like Molt's decks are completely original creations. Like every take Brad has, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't think of it that way. Oh shit, I didn't think of it that way. And I don't always agree, but I'm always thinking differently after I watch a piece of content, which is really cool.
I appreciate that.
All right, Brad, there's one more thing that Bootman would boot you from this if you didn't promote it on our show. What is the last remaining piece of content you need to inform our loyal listeners about?
If you were to go to Bootman's wonderful channel, you will find our podcast, Snap on Ego.
Oh.
As everyone always says, you should snap on Ego on site, maybe not in Conquest mode. Let's not do that. That's a little bit ridiculous. I would go as far to say he shouldn't be in Conquest mode in general, but whatever. It's our podcast. We do a lot of stuff on there. We like to try to talk about as many things we can about Marvel Snap and try to give off the vibe of two friends at a bar just having fun talking about the game that we love. So if you want to support us, I recommend watching that.
Awesome. You should definitely, it's a great podcast. Really great listen. You should definitely, you all bi-weekly, right?
Mhm.
Still?
Yes. At the moment, yes.
Cool. Awesome. All right. One final segment, which is our variant of the week, which we picked Hulk this week. And sort of we had 3. So I'll go for my first. I selected Taco Tuesday Hulk. My favorite version of the Hulk is MCU Hulk. So this variant is definitely on my buy list in the variant shop at the next opportunity that I get to grab it. So this is my favorite Hulk variant.
Molt? Nope.
Glazer?
Molt has the same one.
Oh, Molt.
Yeah, mine was Taco as well. I have the variant, so I'm excited about that. I like that it's a different perspective, and he's kind, and he's like, "Hey, want some tacos?" And while I beat your lane,
I do. If he beat my lane and every time I got a taco, I'd be so much happier.
Yes,
Great.
Brad.
Oh yeah, so mine is actually unreleased at the moment. I can't remember the name of it. It's it's basically the Planet Hulk variant. And as much as I love a lot of the variants, I love the Taco Hulk and stuff like that. A lot of them go into that more cartoony, chibi, cute version of Hulk, which is nice to see. But none of them really come out and say this is the Hulk, much like this one does. So I am just begging Second Dinner to release this. You have it. It's data mined. It's there. Just give it to me, please. It's so great.
This is World Breaker Hulk by Miko Soyan. Just so you know.
It's fantastic.
So
All right,
I
Glazer.
like this Hulk because I don't have to bother getting a gold background on it. It's the one I pulled randomly. All I had to do is get a nice gold border, and it looks like I made this Hulk gold, and that was really nice. Also, I generally like classic looking art. I want the character to look as they would in a comic book in my childhood. And this isn't what Hulk looked like in comic books in my childhood, but it's what I remember him looking like in comic books from my childhood, and that's good enough for me.
Powerful. All right. So that brings us to the end of this, our 31st episode of Snap Judgments. Brad and thank you so much for joining us this week. We really appreciate you having on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been awesome. You have to come on our show next time.
Absolutely. Molt, thank you so much for joining us, making this the truly 3 times the value episode for joining us. We really appreciate it.
of course. Yeah, I appreciate y'all having me. I always love chatting about this stuff, especially moves. So yeah, it was a good time.
Awesome. And Glazer, as always, thank you very much, my friend, for doing this with me week in, week out.
Peace and love, everybody.
All right, loyal listeners, have a great rest of your week. Make good choices, stay safe, and keep on snapping.